findings of the 17th edition of the ReSAKSS Annual Trends and Outlook Report, themed Moving the Technology Frontiers in African Agri-Food Systems. I am Lai Butake, Director of Communication and Outreach for Academia 2063 and your MC for the occasion. Today, we are moving on to the final discussions based on the chapters discussed in this 17th edition of the ReSAKSS ATOR. And we will hear from experts who will talk about, opportunities for moving from innovation to impact, opportunities for financing pathways in agri-food systems technology, and of course, facilitating policy dialogue as we handle these issues. So the theme for today's discussions is investing in innovation, policy, and financing for technology deployment. As always, we have a rich panel of speakers for this session. We are providing simultaneous interpretation in English and French. So if you need the interpretation function, you can click the button at the bottom of your screen. We have a dedicated Q&A box as well. So over the course of this discussion, if you have any questions, contributions, observations for the speakers, please head to the Q&A and drop your comments, and they will be brought to the attention of the speakers. We are looking forward to a highly engaging session. So as always, please head to the chat, tell us your name, your position, and your affiliation. And we look forward to engaging with you over the next couple of hours. Now, let me welcome our first speaker of the day to help us get a recap of what has been discussed over the last 2 days, and of course, the expectations for today's session. Welcome Dr. Paul Guthiga, Head of the ReSAKSS Unit at Academia 2063.
So thank you very much, Lai, and hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. And warm welcome to the final day of this year's ReSAKSS conference. As mentioned by Lai, my name is Paul Guthiga. I head the ReSAKSS unit at Academia 2063. And this afternoon, I'm joining you from Nairobi, Kenya. So as mentioned, my role today is a brief one, is to provide you a recap of what happened yesterday, and also to tell you what you should expect today. So yesterday, we had about 3 hours of intense interactions. 9 chapters of this year's Annual Trends and Outlook report were presented and discussed in very interactive panels. Those chapters or those presentations were clustered around 3 themes. So 3 chapters were presented under the theme of digitization, AI, and biotechnology. 3 other chapters were presented under the theme of mechanization, irrigation, processing, and value addition. And then the last 3 chapters were presented under the theme of energy production, emerging production techniques, if you like. So I would not try to tell you everything that we had and learned yesterday, because there's so many takeaway messages. But I think there are 2 that stuck with me. The first one is that the priority for our continent is really not development of new technologies, but rather scaling up the existing ones and ensuring that they are widely deployed, adopted, and used. In fact, a presentation by Dr. Fai at the beginning of the session yesterday showed that most countries have very high untapped potential index for use of these technologies, including AI. But for these technologies to be deployed at scale and widely used, we will require to address the underlying inhibitions, if you like, that range from institutional, infrastructure, for example, connectivity and issues of power, financial, issues of capacity and skill gaps that hinder their deployment. The other takeaway message for me from those presentations was that the optimal approach for this technology scaling up, whether they be in irrigation, mechanization, or AI, or even biotechnology, is not merely deploying them individually, but really combining them in terms of bundling them together to ensure that they are optimally used by those who need to use them. Today is the final day of this year's ReSAKSS conference. The remaining 4 chapters of the ETOA will be presented. But in addition to those chapters being presented, we are going to have 3 interesting sessions. We are going to have a feature session on innovating financing for agri-food technologies. As noted earlier, the issues of finance limit the scaling up of this available technology. So we'll be hearing from a group of panelists on their ideas. We will also have a session on the insights for the implementation of the newly adopted Kampala Cardiff Declaration, whose life has begun this January 2026 and will be with us for the next 10 years up to 2035. Later on, we'll have a high-level closing panel before we come to the official closure of the conference. Otherwise, I thank you very much for listening to me, and I wish you a good session today and enjoy yourself. Back to you, Lai. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul, for providing that recap on what we have discussed over the last 2 days and what to be expected today. So we are moving on to our first session of the day, Cluster 4, R&D, Seed Systems, Institutional Enablers, and Policy Dialogue. Please welcome the moderator of the session, Principal Scientist and Head of Social Sciences and Impact Assessment Unit at ICP. He's also one of the co-editors of the 17th edition of the ReSAKSS Annual Trends and Outlook Report, Dr. Menale Kassi. Dr. Kassi, you have 45 minutes for this session. Over to you.
Thank you, Lea. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining this critical session on the enabling environment, how we can take this the frontier technologies we've discussed today, yesterday, and then before yesterday. So in this session, we have 3 great speakers and then 3 discussants. So we'll start with the speakers, and then each speaker have 8 minutes. When you hit 6 minutes, I will tell you how 2 minutes is remaining. So the first speaker is going to be Dr. Gert Janstad. He's from the Alliance Biodiversity SEAD. He's going to talk to us on nurturing African agriculture transformation and the role of investment in research and development. And then after him, we'll have Moti Jalata from the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center. He will talk on a critical issue on policy and regulatory framework for development of seed system in our continent, focusing on sub-Saharan Africa. And then the last but not least speaker is going to be Dr. Fidel Eric. He's from academia. So he will talk about on the role of digitally enabled smallholder producer organizations in promoting emerging agricultural technologies in Africa, smallholder producer organizations. After the speakers, we'll bring on board our distinguished discussant. So with this, I would like to invite Dr. Gert Janstad to deliver his speech. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Menale, and thank you for the organizers for giving me the opportunity to share the main findings of Chapter 12 of this ATOR this year. Let me just quickly share my screen. Can you all see this? Let me put it on full screen.
It's coming, yeah. Just you can put it on presentation mode.
Okay, perfect. So, well, as Minala just said, chapter 12 is about nurturing African agricultural transformation and the role of R&D investment. And this is a chapter that that I didn't author myself. This was a team effort together with Dorothy Okello from the University of Makerere in Uganda, Phil Pardy and Connie Chan Kang from the University of Minnesota in the US, and Hernan Munoz from FAO. So let me just start quickly by setting the context. So, well, I think we all agree that agriculture still matters enormously in Africa, just for food security, for jobs, for stability, and that has always been the case, right? But what has changed in recent years, though, is the pressure that the system is under. So there's population growth, there's climate stress, etc. And looking ahead, those pressures are only going to increase. So the core point of our chapter is a fairly straightforward one, right? So if African agriculture is going to be more productive, more resilient, more transformative, then sustained investment in science and technology is really, really essential. So not just as a quick fix, but as a long-term foundation for stronger agri-food system. And this isn't anything new. African leaders have long recognized this through CAADP, the Malabo Declaration, the Kampala Declaration. But the key question that this chapter is trying to address is whether investment patterns and research systems are actually aligned with those ambitions. So what does the evidence tell us? So if we look at the long-term trends, there's been real progress. So that's very positive. So public agriculture R&D spending in Africa has nearly doubled between the year 2000 and 2020. And in 2020, the continent as a whole spent $4.3 billion. But some of the growth in the early years, that coincided with the launch of CAADP in 2003. But two aspects of the trends we're seeing now are quite concerning. So first is that the pace of growth has actually started slowing down quite considerably since around the year 2011. And that slowdown really matters because the payoffs to agricultural research often take decades to materialize, which means that any interruptions or stagnations today will show up as productivity gaps tomorrow. And the second aspect is that the investment is extremely uneven across countries. Just 4 countries, as you can see on this graph at the bottom, Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. Those 4 countries account for more than half of all public agriculture R&D spending on the continent. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have around 30 countries investing less than $50 million each. And these are often small, very fragmented systems with limited critical mass, heavy dependence on donor funding, and very, very little room to invest in actual research beyond just staff salaries and basic infrastructure. So for many of these countries, it's actually very, very difficult to sustain diverse research programs focused on a variety of commodities and a variety of agroclimatic zones, but also to respond to emerging challenges like climate change. So yeah, this brings me to what's probably one of the central findings of this chapter. So even though the absolute spending on agriculture R&D has increased, investment relative to the size of the agricultural sector has declined over time. So Africa's research intensity ratio fell from 0.52% in the year 2000 to just 0.38% in 2020. And in fact, 41 out of the 46 African countries for which we had data were below the 1% CAADP target in 2020. And the issue isn't just whether countries meet this 1% benchmark or not. The bigger problem is that this one-size-fits-all indicator tells us actually very, very little about how an R&D system is actually performing. So for example, what we're often seeing is that small island nations or desert countries, they can look strong on paper given the very, very small size of their ag sector, but and in contrast, like larger countries, they tend to have more well-established systems, but they often have much lower intensity ratio. So even a very strong system like India, for example, they invest only 0.3% of their agricultural GDP in agricultural research. So it's a bit of a meaningless indicator. So focusing too narrowly on this investment ratio also risks overlooking other critical factors, right? So things like the availability of skilled researchers, the resources that these researchers have to work with, but also the stability of the funding over time and the ability of a research system to generate high quality research outputs. So if our actual goal is agricultural transformation, then simply tracking spending isn't enough. We really need to look at how research systems actually perform to understand where the real constraints and the opportunities lie. Right, and that's why our chapter 12 argues for shifting the focus from spending levels to system performance, right? So together with colleagues from the AU, from FAO, from the CG, we developed what we call this Agricultural R&D System Capacity Index, or ARD-SCI, to kind of complement the traditional investment metrics. And let me be very clear up front, this ARD-SCI isn't a perfect metric, right? We had to keep it simple because of data limitations, and there isn't time to dive in all the methodology here, but the logic is pretty straightforward. So we argue that strong research systems depend not just on money, but also on qualified researchers, on sustained political commitment, and the ability to generate a critical mass of scientific output. And this slide shows how different ways of measuring performance can tell very, very different stories, because the chart on the left shows how countries rank according to the traditional intensity ratio. So R&D spending relative to agricultural GDP. Then the chart in the middle shows the ranking when using this ARD-SCI, this new index that we developed, which also takes human capacity and scientific outputs into account. And then the chart on the right kind of shows the absolute difference in the ranking between these two measures. And the differences are quite striking, right? Because what we're seeing is that a lot of the smaller countries like, Cape Verde, Gambia, Lesotho, Mauritania, they look quite strong when we just consider the traditional intensity ratio. But once we factor in their human capacity and their research outputs, their ranking drops significantly, right? And then on the other hand, some of the larger systems like South Africa, Egypt, Kenya, Morocco, Nigeria, they kind of show an opposite pattern, right? Because they show, they score much, much higher on the ARD-SCI index than under the intensity ratio. So basically, NARS in these larger countries, they tend to have a much broader disciplinary coverage in terms of research programs, in terms of staffing. They tend to have stronger institutions, better infrastructure, etc. And this critical mass really enables them to produce more and often better quality research. So this doesn't mean smaller countries are failing. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm finishing up. So this doesn't mean that smaller countries are failing. They just don't have the same scale or institutional depth. So that's why cross-country collaboration is so important. So by linking these smaller systems more closely with the larger, more mature systems, smaller countries can leverage expertise, they can access shared resources and increase their impact without trying to do everything on their own. So the key message is simple, judging country R&D performance by intensity ratios, as the CADA biannual review process has done over the past 2 decades, is actually quite misleading, right? So that's why we're working with them to integrate a more holistic R&D indicator into future biannual review processes that doesn't only look at spending, but that also takes human capacity and research outputs into account. So let me just close by drawing out what this means for policy. So, like strong research and innovation, we all agree are essential if Africa is going to feed its population or, to respond to climate change and other things. But right now, the continent's research is just simply too fragmented, right? As we saw in previous slides. So to make a real difference, we need more cross-country coordination, closer integration as well. So that So what needs to happen? So our chapter concludes with 5 key areas to focus on, which you can see here. So first, investments must increase significantly, and they need to be delivered through funding mechanisms that really build institutional resilience and that reduce dependence on often short-term donor cycles. Second, it's not just about investing more, but investing smarter as well, right? So many national systems, as I showed before, simply lack the scale to address complex challenges on their own. So regional approaches, shared infrastructure, things like pooled expertise are really, really essential, therefore. Next, human capacity is really, really critical as well. We need to develop the next generation of scientists. So without sustained investment in training, including in emerging areas like data science and climate adaptation, no amount of funding will translate into innovation. Fourth, agriculture R&D needs to be much more closely embedded in the broader agri-food innovation system. So research only delivers when it is connected, to policy, to markets, to private sector actors, and to farmers. And finally, as I said before, how we measure performance really, really matters, right? Because if we continue to rely on misleading indicators to measure R&D performance, we will continue to misdiagnose the problem, because using the more nuanced tools like the ARDSCI that I just presented helps us see where the gaps really are, so that investments and policies can actually make a difference. And I'll just leave it with that. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Gert. This is brilliant. It's a very insightful presentation. You alluded to very important information. I think this shows Africa has a long way to go to strengthen the research on spending, and then we'll see how the Kampala Declaration will enforce this. So I will ask the participants to send questions through the chat box. And then also I encourage participants to read the full chapter so that you can get the full insight of this presentation. So thank you, Gert. So let's proceed to the next presentation. That is by my colleague, Moti Jalata. Please, Moti, go ahead.
Thank you, Manale. Let me see if Ibno is uploading my presentation from that side. If you can put it on full screen mode. Yeah. Thank you very much. First, I would like to start by thanking the Academia 2063 and the ReSAKSS for inviting me to contribute to this interesting ATOR 2025 book. When I got the invitation, I pulled 2 known seed system scientists as a co-author. Walter Chifaza from CIMMYT is a seed system specialist, and Dawit Alemu from Ethiopia, now working at teaching Wageningen Research in Ethiopia, also known for working a lot on the seed systems research. So this is chapter 13, focusing on policy and regulatory frameworks for development of seed systems in sub-Saharan Africa. Next slide. Just to give you some insights as an introduction, we know seed is a key technology in crop production, and there is no production at all if you are not having seed, especially in the crop production business. And national and international research institutes are doing their best in breeding crops for generating improved varieties. Seed companies are also releasing a wide range of improved varieties that are having good potential to adapt to climate change and also resilient to biotic and biotic shocks. Getting these newly released varieties to farmers' hand needs a functional and inclusive seed system. And at the same time, it's not only the technology, the infrastructure, but for having a functional and inclusive seed systems, we also need to have a good policy and regulatory framework in each countries and across the region these countries are operating. Next slide. So why policy and regulatory frameworks? Just just touch on briefly. First of all, policies, they provide an overarching structure that defines, how the seed systems are functioning, because policies are the ones that are generating incentives for any actor involved within the seed business. And also they clearly state the role that the private and public sectors in seed production, distribution, and sales are playing. The regulatory framework also helps, to ensure the development and use of high quality seeds, establishing standards for quality control, pricing mechanisms, and having a playing field for competitive seed markets. Having both the policy and regulatory framework is functioning in a given country help us to create an enabling environment for a sustainable and effective, inclusive, efficient seed system. That's one of the reasons why we have done this review work on the policy and regulatory frameworks and how they are affecting the seed system development in Africa. Take a slide. So our work is more of a review. We try to review the policies, the seed laws, and any seed-related regulation that the countries have, any acts and directives that they have as a document, and also looked into the institutions that facilitate, in implementing these policies, laws, and regulations. In East Africa, we focused on Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. In Southern Africa, we looked into the cases of Zimbabwe and Zambia. In West Africa, Benin, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Mali, and Nigeria are included in the review work that we have done. Central Africa, we didn't get much details, but just we gave some highlights on what it looks like. Next slide. So to frame the review work that we have done, we tried to have like 3 key questions, critical questions related to policy and regulatory frameworks. The first one is, what is expected development pathway when the country would like to design and implement policies and regulatory frameworks that help to make seed systems responsive to smallholder farmers' demand. And the second one is, okay, if they have this, how long does it take for these policies to influence the change in seed systems development? And then the third one is, in addition to having, proper policy and regulatory framework in place, what are the key other aspects that the enabling environment would like to have, so that, that the potentially limited development of seed system developing world would be addressed. So these are the areas that we have focused when we have been doing the review, but in some of the cases, these questions were not really answered due to lack of information in the review. Next slide. Though there are a lot of cases that we have documented under the country case studies, these are some of the identified gaps from the policy and regulatory frameworks. Most of the countries, they have seed act, seed policies, but on case by case, we figured out that there are directives which are really lacking, especially registering farmers' variety. They are more focusing on the formal sector, but in most of the crops, we have farmers' varieties that need to be registered as well, and the policy and regulatory framework should give attention to these kind of directives. And regulations are missing, especially when there are emergency seed supply systems, because these are sometimes disrupting the existing and established seed systems when we are intervening to address the emergency issues. Some of the countries don't have seed laboratory testing and administration regulations. On the certification side, some countries also lack the self and third-party seed certification processing. And some of the countries, seed counterfeit is a challenge, but how to control and enforce, to avoid this kind of a business is not really well documented. And then finally, the unfair competition between public and private seed companies, especially where we have this plural kind of public-private seed production and marketing arrangements. Next slide. So I'm not going into the details of the country by country case, but generally what we have concluded from the review is the need to have, market liberalization through better policies, especially that favors the private sector. In some of the countries, the seed market is highly liberalized because of the policies. But there are cases, if we are going for this kind of liberalized seed market, it might lock out marginalized farmers from the system, as the private seed companies are looking into areas where they can generate good money under well-connected roads. So marginal farmers should be addressed maybe through other arrangements, though we have a liberalized market. Unfair competition, which I already stated there, under pluralistic arrangement, and hybrid seed system, where we have public and private as a pathway. That might be something that we need to focus on, especially till the local capacity is developed to move into a more liberalized market conditions. Next slide. The other interesting point that the policies and regulatory frameworks should move into and well addressed in the literature is, the use of emerging technologies like digital platforms and blockchains for seed traceability. They help in improving information dissemination and the supply and demand systems of seeds, especially in tracing the qualities and also the source of the seed, and tackle the counterfeit seed counterfeit challenges that have been indicating to. And also blockchain for similar purposes, and any policy regulation that is bringing this on board might be helpful for managing the liberalized seed market. Next slide. So in addition to that, we need to have institutionalizing innovative policy and regulatory frameworks as a key step in developing seed systems that support the transformation of agri-food system in sub-Saharan Africa through making improved seeds accessible to smallholder farmers. For that, strengthening the public-private producer partnership is key, as some of the countries are doing that and have had a meaningful seed delivery system to smallholder farmers. And also harmonizing, yeah, I'm finishing, Minale. Yeah, harmonizing the regional seed policies with the national seed policies for inter-country seed trading is also another area. In areas where we have this kind of harmonized seed policies and regulations, there are a good seed business arrangement. Is a good case is the Eastern African community. Next slide. So as a summary, effective seed systems requires coherent laws on a variety release, quality assurance, the intellectual property rights, and having market organizations in place, and also to have a diverse reform. Countries have a diverse reform pathways to reach into the different level that they have reached at the moment. But what we are seeing is more liberalized private sector driven models are where we have seen an interesting reach of improved seed to the smallholder farmers. Regional harmonization, as I indicated earlier, is really key so that you can check and balance what is happening in the country and across the regions. And then finally, our chapter argues that the seed policy should be balancing regulations and competitions to create space for the private sector as well, and also promote climate resilient and locally adapted varieties, and at the same time has to protect marginalized farmers so that no one is left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Moti. Again, this is a critical area that Africa needs to work if you want to advance the agri-food system transformation by expanding the reach of these frontier technologies we discussed or presented in this report. I think for the sake of time, again, I encourage participants to send questions through the chat box. If time allows, we'll give a chance later on. Thank you, Moti, again. And then let's proceed to the last presentation. Fidel is there.
Yeah.
Grace.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Kasi. Allow me to share my screen. Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So this presentation is about the role of digitally enabled smallholder producer organizations in promoting emerging agricultural technologies in Africa. So I'm presenting on behalf of a team. This is a team from all the authors are from Academia 2063. We have been discussing this as 2 days. Technologies central for structural transformation. Technologies can help improve productivity, which can affect structural transformation, especially when those technologies are combined with capable institutions, evidence-based and participatory governance. Traditionally, many agricultural technology transfer models have been used in Africa. We have in the chapter developed advantage and disadvantage for each of them. We can cite, here, farmer field school, research to extension to farmers model, training and visit model, innovation platform, and so on. All those models have proven to be effective in disseminating some technologies, but none of them are without limitations. In addition, they are human intensive and not really suited to private-driven sector. Therefore, they are limited in promoting emerging technologies. And when we say emerging technologies, we mean remote sensing such as drones, AI-enabled advisory, precision agriculture, digital platforms. So the adoption rates among smallholder farmers are low when it comes to those emerging technologies because of high costs, data requirement, and institutional gaps. Emerging technologies actually require high initial investments, intensive data, knowledge requirements. They need to be private sector driven, and they need strong institutions. So this chapter suggests small producers organizations as strategic solutions. Small producer organizations, SPOs, through their collective action can help reduce financial risk and transaction costs. SPOs can help aggregate resources, can help share costs for infrastructures, devices, and data acquisitions. They can also help build partnership with private sectors. They can help link farmers to government programs and research. They can help build trust among farmers and service providers. In addition, SPOs can act as intermediaries for AI-based technologies. SPOs can be used to collect data at farmers' level, and those data, when aggregated, can be used by AI system to generate AI insight and share with farmers via SMS and so on. SPOs can also help link farmers to firms such as agri-tech startup. They can also help facilitate access to farmers and also access to market. So, what are the actions, strategic actions that can help SPOs achieve this objective? So, specific actions that can enable SPOs-led adoption when it comes to emerging technologies. One of the points, as found out from this chapter, is that SPOs have to be digitally and institutionally enabled to play the role of technologies intermediaries. And this can be done through capacity building, such as train leaders, train extension agents in digital literacy, provide affordable devices and connectivity solutions, help build partnerships such as public-private partnerships, and collaborate with agri-tech for tailored solutions. Also, it's important to strengthen governance, ensure data transparency, accountability, build trust through clear data ownership policies, and revise business model, implement public-private producers partnership for peace. One example of how to digitally enable SPOs is what has been implemented through the PIN project together with academia and PAFO. PAFO is an SPO, is Pan-African Farmer Organization. So throughout this project, the team was able to integrate advanced data insight directly into routine extension services. The team was also able to utilize cooperative as trusted delivery channel. So farmers were empowered, something that helped them to shift from passive recipient to active data users and decision makers. So the PIN is an example to provide concrete evidence that empowering local institutions with digital tools can create sustainable pathway for scaling agricultural innovations. So, as key points, we show throughout this chapter that traditional technology transfer models is limited, especially when it comes to advanced emerging technologies. And we show that small producer organizations, SPOs, can drive advanced technology adoptions. But to be able to do that, they need to be digitally and institutionally enabled. This includes transparent and inclusive governance. For policymakers, they need to invest in SPOs, digital readiness and infrastructure, which can and also enable framework for public-private partnership, but also public-private producers partnerships for peace. It's also good to measure SPO digital performance and impact, study government's technology interactions. So at the end, SPOs must be recognized as co-creators and not just passive beneficiaries. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Fidel. That's brilliant. You saved us some time as well. That's excellent. Yeah. Yes, producer organizations are critical, of course, to link smallholder producers with inputs and output markets, which is critical again, with the uptake of this the frontier technologies presented or discussed in the report. So thank you so much. So again, participants, please send your question to Fidel and then other co-authors, and then I encourage you again to read the full chapter so that you can get the full information in each chapter presented, the 3 chapters presented. So the next session is, like as I said at the beginning, we have distinguished discussants with wide experience. So we have Professor Ed, a senior research associate from Cornell University, and also from the African Seed Access Index. And then a second discussant is Isofu Kapran, President, Seed System Group. Probably, yes, thank you so much. And then the third discussant is Mrs. Silvia. Is she around? Yes, thank you so much. So thank you, three of you. So I will just ask one question per discussant, and then please try to limit your discussion maybe max of 2 minutes. So let me give Sylvia, you can on your camera. I would like to start with you. Well, you are the CEO of the Sterling Seed Limited Company. You have a wide experience in terms of the regulatory, the policy going on that Dr. Moti has presented to us. The question to you is, from your experience, what are really the most urgent regulatory reforms that Africa needs to strengthen the existing seed system that we have in our continent?
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank Academia 2063 for the opportunity. And I'm also glad to be here to share about what I'm very passionate about. And what keeps me up awake at night is ensuring that farmers, especially the smallholder farmer, has access to high input and good quality seed. So straight to the point, of course, you know, from the discussions that we've had since yesterday, we've seen that adoption rates for all improved varieties or improved technologies in Africa are generally low. We're talking of only up to 30% of what is uptaken by formal sector. The rest all depend on farm-saved seed. And then this is basically because of limited access to inputs. There's poor distribution networks. There's affordability constraints. And then, of course, we have the big elephant that is always sung about, the counterfeit. I'm mentioning this because those are the real issues that actually, as regulatory reforms, we need to look at. And this cannot be done by seed companies alone. It can't be done by regulators alone. It can't be done by farmers alone. We all have a collective responsibility. So straight to address the regulatory frameworks that we need to address. One, we all know that we have harmonized regulations in the regions. We have the SADC, we have ECOWAS, we have COMESA seed regulations, which have been harmonized as regions to allow for mutual recognition of varieties and therefore to allow access to seed varieties across borders. But implementation of these at national level remains very low. And therefore, one of the urgent regulatory reforms that we need to have is to align national seed laws and regulations with the agreed regional standards, and then also to regularly update those catalogs so that seed can easily move across borders. Secondly, in ensuring that we have harmonization, we also need to invest in regulator capacity building. From the presentations before me, you saw that actually different countries are at different levels of of implementing their systems. But we can benchmark with countries that have gone ahead of us: Kenya, South Africa, Zambia. For those that don't have capacity, they can benchmark and build that capacity. But this requires government goodwill, good political will, and proper coordination. On the side of seed companies, we also need to invest in strengthening seed traceability and tracking systems and digital monitoring systems. In Uganda, for example, we have a system that is called STTS, Seed Tracking and Traceability System. This one enables you to track all your seeds from all the way from production all the way up to the consumer. So this helps us to track production, ensure quality control, and also curb the counterfeits. And this is done real time. So I think one of the other reforms is to invest in introducing such digital monitoring systems. The third reform I would suggest is to strengthen seed certification and quality assurance systems. Farmers have not adopted seed majorly because they don't even have trust in the seed that is produced. Sometimes the seed, because of weak enforcement of regulations, because of lack of capacity, sometimes the seed on the market has not qualified the farmers' expectations. But if we can invest in having accredited seed laboratories in each country, we have accredited labs, we have trained inspectors, and then we also build their capacity to have the numbers that are required to do the inspections. And also, governments should accredit private or third-party inspectors and to help them to address some of the regulatory functions, but of course with their site in place. And lastly, of course, as we know, many African seed companies depend on public institutions because they have limited capacity in research and development. But if we can, as countries, have effective plant variety protection and IP enforcement, this will probably incentivize private investment in breeding, licensing, and then local adaptation of climate resilient varieties. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think you have outlined interesting additional reforms. I'm not going to repeat them. Let me go to Professor Ed. Well, you are in the research ecosystem. So the question to you is, in what ways our research can inform the design of inclusive seed systems that take into account the women, that can take into account the young people, people with disabilities, or in general, the marginalized group, from your experience?
Thank you very much, Dr. Cassie, and it's such a pleasure to be here. Good day to all. I've worked in the seed sector in Africa for the last almost 3 decades. So to transform that into a 3-minute sound bit is a little bit challenging. But let me just start by saying that thanks to the presenters, some of these issues have already been highlighted. I think it's quite positive, first of all, to know that the seed system is starting to recognize that inclusiveness is important. 10 years ago, nobody was, 20 years ago, was talking about how to include women and youth. We just thought that the more seed we can get out there, the better. So inclusivity is becoming one of those measurements by which we evaluate the performance of seed systems. So that is, in and by itself, is a positive thing. So we know that inclusion must be designed and not added on. I will highlight here, just due to the limited time, the seed value chain is extremely long. It starts from breeding within a laboratory all the way to farmer access. If you want to define the key areas where inclusivity matters, let me just highlight the beginning and ending of that process and skip the entire middle. So we do know that when it comes to breeding varieties, gender-responsive breeding is quite important if we're going to include women. Women farmers often value different traits. They value processing quality, labor, risk, cookability, whereas this could be a stereotype, but male farmers might just value yield. So to the extent that breeders are now starting to be responsive to women, asking what women want, and integrating these preferences into the variety development, this should allow for better uptake of those varieties. So there's uncontestable evidence supporting this, and I'm glad that gender responsive breeding has become quite an issue. You see this in the CGRs, the NARIs, the universities, they're all incorporating this, and this is quite positive. So that was the very beginning point of the breeding and research part. Skip the entire middle. I'm going to put us down in the farm gate. What can we do at that level when it gets to the farmer? We know that last mile access is critical. There are still key barriers that might affect women more differently than men, and these issues pertain to distance, liquidity, cash availability, information, and social norms. These are messy little issues that you find when you go to the rural areas in Africa that are impeding access of these varieties by women. We have a lot of evidence. The work that I've been doing with the Africa Seed Access Index, TASAI, shows that availing seed in small packages, for example, helps women try out. So if we have 2 kg packages, that helps. We need strong agro-dealer networks, and we need bundling of seed with information and advisory service. So seed by itself might not be adequate. We combine all these approaches and we expand this customer base to include women and youth. Before I yield my time, I want to just highlight one key issue that often goes missing in these high-level discussions. For any of these questions that we're asking, there is a very specific answer that depends on the country, the crop, and the year. These things are moving and changing. I really want to encourage people to go, if they really want to get to the level of granularity, to go and look at country reports from TASAI, from Seed Systems Group, from AGRA's SeedSat model that really get to those issues in granularity so that we stop pointing everything with a broad brush, but we get to really specific details. For teff in Ethiopia, for cassava in Nigeria, there is a very specific answer to these questions as well. And with that, I will yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's excellent. This country-specific, context-specific, we need to look at those issues. So I'm happy also you mentioned this gender-responsive breeding, which is critical for inclusiveness. So thank you so much, Prof. Let me move to Dr. Isufu Kapran. So I would like to ask you a question related to Sylvia, as you are in this seed system landscape. Probably you can on your camera so that participant is there. Thank you so much. Yeah. So the question to you is, what aspect of the current seed regulation in Africa really discourage or hinder private investment, particularly in breeding, seed multiplications, and in distribution? If you can give us maybe 3 critical factors that affect those private companies.
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me. Work for Seed Systems Group. We are active in 15 different countries, but with experience in many more from previous tutors. And what we know about this issue is based on dealing with our country partners, especially seed companies, but not only. And it should be clear that the issues don't apply uniformly to all countries. And this I want to echo Ed. Things are changing depending on the context. But I look at what we have gone through as SSG, and I have a list of at least seven issues. One I think is that in many countries research is still monopoly of government. That that discourage private companies from, because they don't have no say in the types of technologies and the outputs which are public good, that makes them less competitive. Second is in some countries or in most countries, private companies are banned or required to have breeders, their own breeders in order to do variety release. And it limits also the offer they make to farmers. Third is production of early generation seed. It's an everlasting issue. In many countries, it's approved only for public institutions. And this makes the planning very complex for private companies. Fourth is still about early generation seed. Sometimes it's allowed for private companies, but they need a separate registration. And it can be costly or cumbersome. So it's they don't want to engage. Fifth is when you have institutional purchase of a seed, purchase and distribution of grain, this competition with what companies want to do directly with the farmers, the quality of seed which is produced, or I say, the quality seed which are produced at a cost by seed companies are not profitable anymore. So national capacity remains stagnant and farmer productivity also. But this is not necessarily a seed regulation. It's a problem, but not necessarily a regulation. The last one I want to talk about is the registration for input dealers. It can be costly and cumbersome in some countries. Or, for example, you can have an input dealer who wants to register, and they will tell him to go to one department for seed, another for CPP, another for fertilizer, and for small input dealers, it may be a big problem. So I think this kind of set of issues, and probably there are more, they really tend to make it difficult for the private sector to invest.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will go to the second round, but I would be happy to give a chance for participant at least one question. If we can go first, the participants, if you have one question to the discussant as well as to the speakers. One question. If you don't have, I will go. Laiha, do we have time now? Or?
We have to round up and move on to the next session, Dr. Kess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, then I think, okay. Then thank you. Then I have to conclude it then. Thank you so much, the great speakers, and then also thank you so much for the distinguished discussants. Of course, with 45 minutes, we cannot address this. It's a critical issue, but like as I said, let's keep on reading the chapters, and then of course, in general, the entire report, which is really critical for us to transform the agri-food system of our continent. So thank you, chapter owners, congratulations. We really appreciate your effort, the effort that you have made to finalize your chapter. So thank you, the discussants. Over to Lai.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cassie. And even though we ran out of time, I would invite all the participants, if you have any questions for the speakers from the just ended session, please drop them in the Q&A chat, and the panelists will be able to directly respond to your questions. Moving on to the next session, unfortunately, we don't have enough time for a break. So if you need some coffee, you can quickly step aside and get it. We are moving on to a fireside chat for our feature session on Africa's innovative financing for agri-food technologies, reflections on financing pathways. And to take us through this next session for about 45 minutes, I'm going to invite Academia 2063's Director for Global Strategy and Programs, Dr. Catherine Glatzel.
Thank you so much, Layi. Just checking that you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. And good afternoon, everybody. And warm welcome to the Fireside Chat on Innovative Financing and Agri-Food Technologies. Like Layi said, I'm Katrin Glatzel. I'm Director of Global Strategy and Programs at Academia 2063, based on our Kigali office. We have about 45 minutes to take us through a super important topic. Financing is, of course, at the heart of the debate on how to accelerate the uptake of new technologies and also how to do so at scale. But it's also one of the more complex questions, in particular in this rapidly changing and evolving agtech landscape. So it means bringing together actors around the table who not necessarily speak the same language or who have naturally partnered in the past. So I'm quite excited to have 3 speakers joining us this afternoon to tackle some of the big questions. And of course, we only have time to scratch on the surface of the debate, but we do hope that it will inspire a wider dialogue that we can also carry forward into the year. Like with previous sessions, please make sure to note down your questions. You can drop them in the chat. You can ask them at the end of the session so that, yeah, speakers can address them. So without much further ado, let me get started. I will introduce the speakers as we go to save some time. And I would like to start with you, DBC. Very briefly, Dr. DBC Araba is the Managing Director at Academia 2063. Previously, he served as Managing Director of the AGRF, now known as the Africa Food Systems Forum. He was also the Africa Regional Director at SIAD, an advisor to the Nigerian Agriculture Minister, and is a member emeritus of the Malabo-Montpellier panel. DBC, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to talk to you about, with the changing landscape of official development assistance, that's the big elephant in the room at the moment. How do you perceive the role of development partners, including multilateral and also philanthropic organizations, as well as private sector corporations in driving economic growth and also stimulating opportunities from the ground up?
Yeah, thanks, Katrin. I think for those who are reading the tea leaves, it's really about making financial systems more efficient, but there's also the push to make it more equitable. So even as we look to expanding the quantum of finance available for accelerating agriculture productivity and competitiveness, there's also the challenge of equity and access to affordable finance. So at the macro level, countries accessing finance, what's the rate of borrowing? Is it equally distributed? Of course, we understand on a macro level what determines or what's driving the variations in costs that countries can access global financial markets. But having said that, what we're seeing is countries rallying together and calling for greater equity in access to affordable finance for countries, but also understanding that a lot of African countries are going through serious macro financial burdens in whether it's financing debt, how do you finance long-term infrastructure, the impact of not just the global pandemic, the recovery from the global pandemic, looking at the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and the impact that's had on recalibrating food chains and energy sources. So there's a recalibration going on across the continent and around the world. So it's not just an African issue, it's a global issue. But at the micro level, we're seeing exciting moves of the development of new alternative models in developing new financial products and services that target specific value chains, whether it's through the fintechs, working more private sector entrepreneurship a lot of energy in the entrepreneurial space. For governments, it's really about understanding who's enabling the private sector to move. We're seeing a bifurcation now. And honestly, the data is going to speak for itself. It's no longer, we're moving beyond the era of rhetoric. We can have political leadership, talking, poetically or waxing poetic, but the reality is the data and the results are going to show whether, the work that you're doing is bearing fruit. So can you help, create the policy environment that enables entrepreneurs to thrive? The results will show that. So it's no longer about, what we must, what we should, what we can. It's what people are doing. Now, that's on the local level. When you think about the multilateral financial institutions, there's of course, they also are responsible to their boards, and their boards seek performance and seek results. And so perhaps it's more about how we determine what the targets are in how you channel financing. So we've talked about blended financial models, different blended financial models where you're blending, grant financing with, all the way down to commercial, capital, and ensuring that you derive the main targets and the goods. So sorry, can you hear me? I see my internet connection was unstable. If you lose me, Catherine, just let me know.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
so the African Development Bank, for example, is leading on the continent with targeting or utilizing these blended structures to target derived outcomes, and working with organized private sector, working across specific themes. We could give lots of examples. We perhaps, rather than hugging the spotlight right now, we could come back to it. But what we're seeing is a lot of activity happening at different levels, at the micro level, at the macro level, and everything in between. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And I will come back to you with a follow-up question. But let me first turn to our next speaker, Dr. Koen de Keyser. Very briefly, Koen is a policy analyst with ECDPM based in Brussels, where he focuses on sustainable food systems and climate action and green transitions. And in particular, Koen is interested at looking at the intersection of food systems change and governance, particularly in Africa. Before joining ECDPM, Koen was also a research fellow at the Center of Excellence in Food Security in South Africa, and holds a PhD from the University of Pretoria in political economy. And Koen, if I remember correctly, most recently you also spent some time as a fellow at Leuven University.
Yeah, that's correct, Catherine.
Yeah, but you're back at ECDPM now.
Yes.
Good. So yeah, welcome, Koen. Thanks for joining us. And DBC already alluded to some of the macro challenges that we're facing. So how can we integrate some macro investments, so large-scale infrastructure projects, energy investments, with some of the more micro investments in the ag sector, and thus make them more food sensitive, and what is needed to bridge this gap between investments in different sectors, industrial, infrastructure, energy, and then ag investments. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I'm glad to be here. I want to pick up on a point that the BC said about rhetoric versus reality in a way, and the reality check of what is actually happening on the ground. And I think with sort of investments in agriculture, you can see that happen quite clearly, right? There is a mismatch between what is needed to make agricultural systems, climate resilience, improve productivity, improve livelihood, local market linkages, and so on, and what is actually happening in terms of investments on the ground. So how to go from there? One of the things that we are looking at is that, how can we get investments that are actually done outside of the agricultural sector work for the agricultural sector? So be it in infrastructure, energy, of industrialization, how to make them more food sensitive. Because the real thing is that the investments in these sectors are often much larger more backed by political interests, and you're really talking about billions of dollars into certain production plants. For example, these are ticket items that are much larger than are generally seen in the agricultural sector. Examples, if I can give of those, is that you have investments being announced in ammonia or fertilizer facilities in Morocco, Egypt, but also in Ethiopia and Kenya, but also the corridor infrastructure investments where traditional development donors like the EU are now more focused on. They want scale to happen, and scale is something very tricky to do or to happen in fragmented or scattered agricultural systems. So where we go from here is that we're really trying to get a conversation about happening in linking the reform or the strategies of sectors with each other. So, and particularly focused on sort of agro-industrialization policy. For example, if we can take I think about 2 months ago or something, in Kenya, there was an investment announcement of $800 million by a Chinese investing company called Kaishan in a fertilizer facility to make urea. And the goal is actually it's not really seen as an agricultural investment. It's seen as an energy and industrial investment, right? Like Kenya tries to start a green hydrogen sector, and it's just almost by chance that this facility will focus on, well, not by chance, but the end product is an agricultural product, or an input, urea. But that is almost an afterthought. So you see that from the ministries that are involved. For example, it's energy, it's energy and trade rather than the Ministry of Agriculture. So fine, they focus on fertilizer, but any agronomist can tell you that you cannot just push fertilizers into an agricultural system. You need to accompany it with a host of other things, better farm management, soil testing, and so on, because it's very, very easy to waste fertilizers as well. So what you kind of have to do is you have an industrial policy, you kind of need to link it with agricultural reform and make sure that these two actually start to strengthen one another, because you can see the strengthening of these two sectors there, in which you have the facility providing fertilizer, producing the urea. You got an agricultural reform actually making it more economically viable for farmers to get that urea and to use them properly, which then can back again strengthen Kenya's start into the green hydrogen economy. So the important part, I guess, is that when you is to link the different sectors, and also to look increasingly about regionalization and markets outside of your countries, because at the moment, I think a lot of what we see, especially in East Africa, is that they see each other, neighboring countries or the rest of the continent, as kind of like, oh, we produce our agricultural goods, or we produce our industrial goods, so we can just push it onto their markets. And that is well captured within the policies, but not necessarily that the policies look at what is happening in the other markets and what that means for the feasibility or the success of their policies. So that is still something to work on, to make them better, that there's not an oversupply of anything. So I think the main point, perhaps, what I want to hammer on is that if you want to get the investments happening in the agricultural sector to the scale that is needed for its needs, you have to look in part outside of the sector to make that happen. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Regional integration and leveraging the synergies, really important points. Thank you, Koen. And that actually builds quite nicely on a question that I have for our third speaker, Mr. Andrews Ahiaku, who is the head of inclusive financing at AGRA, where he focuses on scaling agricultural finance, working with financial institutions and developing strategies for agri-SME support, shaping policy, and implementing innovative financing solutions for agri-food systems. So Andrews, welcome. Good to have you with us. Koen already spoke about the need to link, for example, industrial policy with agricultural reforms. So in your view, how can financing programs be designed to truly leverage private capital? And with truly, I mean at the scale that is needed to finance technology development and widespread adoption. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Debisi and Koen, for setting the tone for this discussion. I think it is easy, especially from the international development angle, to design an initiative, be it agricultural finance, and then it does not respond to the actual needs on the ground. So it is important that in designing any financial intervention to unlock private capital, you focus on who is holding the risk or who is bearing the risk, as opposed to who is providing capital. And so probably I'll highlight just three things for the sake of time. In any agricultural design intervention, the key focus has to be on how do we de-risk the incentive, or how do we de-risk the intervention such that it allows the private sector to move in easily. Research suggests that agriculture is twice riskier than any other sector in the economy. And this is born out of the percentage of NPLs in agri as compared to other sectors. And so de-risking the sector is very important. Now, in de-risking it, you also want to answer the question of the cost that the private sector incurs in originating any agricultural intervention. So you are focused on reducing risk, but you also have to think about how do you then defray the cost such that it makes it interesting and easy for the private sector to come through. My colleague spoke briefly about the enabling environment. That is also critical in designing any agricultural intervention. And so what should central government be doing to encourage private sector to come into the market? I know that anytime we speak about challenges bedeviling agriculture, we speak about the SMEs not being bankable. We speak about lenders not providing capital. We blame everybody else but the regulator. And recent studies are beginning to come out showing that even the prudential requirements that the central banks lay out in itself, that's a threaten or poses a challenge. And so that is also another angle that we must look at in designing any agricultural finance intervention. To recap, you need to de-risk, you need to defray the cost, central government must play its role, and then the central bank must also come to the party. I think I'll pause there for the sake of time. And
yeah, thank you.
Dr.
I actually have a direct follow-up question for you because you emphasized on de-risking. Where would you say should concessional finance focus on early stage innovation, on scaling proven models or public goods, to enable private investments? And why would you say the focus on which stage? So early stage innovation, scaling proven models, or public goods?
Catherine, that is a hydra-headed question. It is easy to do a nitpicking and say, do one and leave the others. But my approach would be, no, it is so important that for concessional finance to unlock private capital, you need to tackle all three. But it is important to know the work of concessional finance. The concessional finance is to enable private capital, and it shouldn't be around for the next whatever. Once you address the situation, concessional finance should take a step back and allow private capital to take the lead. And I want to mention a couple of approaches at each level. So if you pick, for example, the early stage innovation, what should be the objective? The objectives of an early stage intervention is to build credible pipeline of investable interventions. And the role of concessional finance at that point is to absorb technology, introduce risk absorption, and support things that otherwise the private sector would not do. So when you get it right, then you have instruments like grants that support research and development, recoverable grants, first stage seed capital, and embedded technical finance that can be unlocked as a result of early seed interventions. The second stage, which is the most important one, is scaling proven agricultural models. And people like to call it as the critical bottleneck, which is the second stage. I think the objective of concessional finance then is to turn workable pilots into bankable and scalable enterprises. So the first one, at the entry point, our focus was on building pipelines. But the second point, we are looking at now scaling bankable enterprises. And this one, when it is done right, with the right instrument, it does unlock interventions beyond grants and allows the private sector, including banks, to come to the table, because then concessional finance has cleared the way. So the focus here is to de-risk cash flow and then focus on removing volatility from the market. You spoke about public goods, and I know in the first round of questions to public goods was mentioned. You cannot deal with entry-level discussions. You cannot deal with the middle ground and leave public goods. Public goods are important. Any technology that you derive, you need government to come to the party with the right infrastructure, and they also need concessional finance. So in rounding up, you cannot do one and leave the other. All three are important, and they all have the instruments that are needed and the design approach that will unlock funding from the private capital. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrews. That's a very clear message, and yeah, important to develop instruments that tackle all different stages. So yeah, thank you for that. We'll come back to you later on with more questions. And again, to the audience, a reminder, please drop your questions in the chat, and there will be a few minutes for your questions at the end. But let me circle back to you, DBC. We said we come back to you to look at perhaps a specific sector a little bit more closely. And last week, you were in Germany. You attended a workshop on the global bioeconomy, and you participated or spoke at an event in Berlin on the blue bioeconomy. And one central element of those discussions was also financing. So given or taking the very concrete example of the bioeconomy, could you share your thoughts on the opportunities for mobilizing innovative financing for the bioeconomy to boost economic growth across the continent?
Thank you very much, Catherine. I must say, Andrews, I did not know that you had joined AGRA. Congratulations on that. You know, Andrews is a dyed-in-the-wool banker. If anyone understands SME financing, it's him. So he's been in the trenches. So I would say we pay close attention to everything he says. Now, between him and Koen, you know, I think that the answer to your question comes. It's two things. One is science is very important. Science underpins and informs not just the direction, but the speed the financing will flow into the bioeconomy. So at the global, at the GFFA, we convened a panel under the auspices of the Marble Montpellier, the blue bioeconomy. And one of the speakers, Hakim Dauda, shared with us his fund, Mwana, that he's raising to invest directly in opportunities across the bioeconomy. Now, with entrepreneurs such such as Akeem, what we are seeing is private capital that is moving in the direction that the science dictates. So it's not enough to say, you know, we want entrepreneurs and we want scientists, or we want entrepreneurs, or we want private capital, or we need the government to create the enabling environment. The science needs to create that clarity on where the financing should go and how. So there's still a lot that needs to happen from a regulatory perspective, governance perspective, how we register geographic indicators, how intellectual property is registered and acknowledged in countries, and even cost sharing when you commercialize innovations. And so there's a lot that will still go on in the sort of in the background beyond mobilizing capital, but there is a lot that the private sector is doing right now. Now, answering your question, or maybe being braver to answer a little bit of the question to Andrew, is in where should, you know, the concessionary capital go, or concessionary financing go, grant capital or grant financing. With the bioeconomy, I think a lot needs to go into the regulatory areas, improving that regulatory framework, and ensuring that the science discovery, codification of the knowledge, and also cost sharing of commercialized innovation is easy to document. So that's where a lot of work needs to go right now. It's not just about, you know, you investing in a prospect and then you're extracting commercial value from it. Now, beyond Mwana that Akeem is working on, we're also seeing, you know, countries waking up to the understanding that Africa's GDP potentially, if we're talking about continental-wide GDP, there is an undercounting when you consider the commercial potential of the bioeconomy. But that doesn't mean we then go and pillage, you know, the entire continent just because there's commercial value there. So I think there's a lot more to do on the governance side, ensuring that there's equity, there's justice, but there's also clarity on how you are documenting what is the intellectual property, what's the value, doing a true cost accounting, as we've done for food systems, or as we're doing for food systems. I think we need to do the same thing for the bioeconomy. Yeah, okay. So I see Cone has just pasted something about undercounting there. Yeah, so I think there's a lot more. In summary, it's, you know, there's a lot more financing can be doing, but I would say we start with, you know, the governance side, the documentation side, that will enable private entrepreneurs such as Akeem. And we're seeing quite a lot of entrepreneurs coming in, raising capital, raising funds to go into this space. Over to you.
Great. Thank you, DBC, for the very pointed answer. And perhaps at that point, I'll come back to Koen, staying with the, well, going a little bit deeper into the ag sector again, but also staying with the question of de-risking. Koen, so while AI agri-tech is growing quite rapidly and spreading fast across the continent and also globally, investments remain insufficiently targeted to smallholder farmers. So for instance, venture capital is often discouraged by the high risks, like we've heard before, and the thin margins of the agriculture sector per se. What can we do about that?
Yeah, thank you for that, Catherine. And I just posted about, because undercounting the VC, what you said about GDP, it just reminds me about this fantastic research that The Economist published, based on other people's research though, about that, you know, real food trade in West Africa might be 5 or 6 times higher than actually what is recorded. And with investment might be the same here. You know, the small, you know, on aggregates, all the small scale farmers investing might be really a sizable number, but undercounted, fragmented, and all of these other issues. Catherine, to your question, you know, venture capitalism is famous for perhaps being okay with high risk, but there also needs to be a high reward. So I think perhaps the problem might be mostly on sort of the low profitability parts of the agricultural sector, while where we see a gap perhaps between what AI could do for smallholder farmers and what it actually, is happening at the moment. But first of all, a bit perhaps of a reality check, like in Europe, I'm clearly based in Europe. In Europe, for example, we also have that discussion that we don't have enough venture capital or for the AI sector in Europe to boom, or give it another way, China and the US have just incredible, rich, deep venture capital markets, and we're not very much able to compete with that. And so, how does this link with smallholders? I think perhaps to take a bit of the aside and a step back from AI potential, what it might mean for smallholders, is that for me at least, AI is one technology in a long line of technologies that somehow have been under implemented in many African agricultural systems or regions, due to a number of long-standing structural factors that in part also will limit the adaptation of AI mechanizations or AI linkages within these systems. And in the rhetoric, at least, sort of, if you hear policymakers talk, they kind of see a potential in AI perhaps to not really do their work in addressing these long-standing structural issues, but kind of say, wow, this is so powerful, perhaps we can leapfrog without us necessarily addressing all these structural things, and we can just leapfrog with the immense power that AI can have into this a better state, where we actually want to go. So I just want to kind of like make the argument that there is a lot of potential. We see it in other agricultural systems that adaptation is actually happening to a certain degree, right? We have, especially on the science side, the analysis is there's fantastic things being happening with analysis. We have remote sensing and sort of making very context specific maps and analysis for people's farm. And then we have on the farm itself, like the integration of AI with mechanization, with robots and whatnot. And it is especially perhaps that last part that I see a bit more struggles at the moment with that adaptation to African context, because it's about, these are very capital intensive products, mechanization things, and they require a high profitability. And that seems to be really like where any investment or seems to have a bit of an issue with. Like you have certain regions where even with the best technology and enabling environment and governance framework, the size of the farms might just be too small for it to actually create, a livable income and so on. Like it seems that there are sort of structural, and I'm not want to focus only on land size, but there are a few like sort of obstacles or stumbling blocks that sort of makes it really difficult for at the moment to have that adaptation happening. So yes, AI should or AI companies would be great if they develop solutions that can be applicable for smallholder context and perhaps more informal markets. But at the same time, there needs to be an investment case for this dynamic to happen and for actually for smallholder farmers to connect with this. And that requires policies that perhaps focus on, to a certain degree on productivity and profitability.
Yeah, thank you, Koen, for that. And I know that there are a lot of sort of super interesting efforts going on across the continent to make these solutions more adaptable. I am quite excited about a company or a firm that I recently came across and maybe our colleagues and partners in Nairobi are familiar with Kala and their Qubit Hub, which is an African-based AI research, innovation, and development lab. And they are working to develop AI-driven solutions for a variety of sectors, but now also moving into the agriculture space to develop AI-driven solutions for smallholder farmers, understanding the needs and bringing them to scale. And we're hoping to see some of those AI incubators spread also further across the continent. So yeah, really interesting discussion. I'm a little bit conscious of time, but I do have one last question, and perhaps very quick one to all three of you. And I'll start with Andrews and then Debisi and Koen and really very, very quick answer, please, so that we can perhaps pick up one or two from the chat. So from your experience and from the discussion over the last 45 minutes, what makes an agri-food technology investable? So what are the main red flags investors see in this space, and really what makes one stand out as investable? And yeah, Andrews, we heard you've been in the banking and finance space for a long time. So please share with us your one insight.
Yeah, maybe my key insight would be character. Because every business is driven by management. We don't give money to the buildings, we don't give money to the crops or the technology, but the money and the business is driven by management. And so the character of management is very important. I recall in my days in banking, as a result of the trust that is built between you and your clients, you're able to put your neck on the line and tell the credit committee, give this money to academia or ReSAKSS, and I know they will pay. And so it is important to build character around any intervention, any business you are doing. Maybe I'll stretch it a bit and say, if you are due for repayment or you need to meet some investor and for some reason you are unable to raise the funds, it is only reasonable that you inform the person probably days or 2-3 days ahead. I know the BC should have paid you by end of month, but there's going to be a struggle. Can you give me up to this time? When you do that, you build credibility, you build trust, and anybody will walk the line for you, vouch for you, and you will get credit without collateral, you get credit without those security, etc. So that will be a quick one from me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. DBC.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I would say maybe there are lots of questions that you could say the technology answers, but maybe I'll mention two. First is, does the technology, increase productivity? And two, is someone willing to pay for it? If someone's willing to pay for it and it's actually increasing productivity, then there is that investment potential. In simple commercial terms. Oh no, did you not hear me? Did you lose me?
You were breaking
Catherine?
up a little bit, but I think it was okay. I think we got the core. We got the core of your message.
So it was two things.
Yeah.
Okay, two things. Does it increase productivity, and is someone willing to pay for it? Those are the two things.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And Koen, over to you.
Yeah, and I would add perhaps to that convenience or something. We also see the spread of technologies or investment. People, farmers also are okay to pay for things that makes their life easier and that runs their business easier. So it's I wouldn't say there's perhaps one factor, but it's really, there's a lot of things that you can bring into the mix. Yeah.
Great, good, thank you. I'm looking at the chat. I saw that there were quite a few links shared and I think a comment. Layi, are there any other questions? Otherwise, I'll take moderator's privilege to ask one more question before we wrap up.
Yes, please go ahead, Catherine.
Okay. Good. And whoever feels like picking up that question, not all three of you need to answer, given that we only have a couple of minutes left. But being a research-driven organization and environment here, I need to ask, what is the status of the research evidence on which financing models, such as blended finance, impact funds, challenge funds, carbon finance, payment for ecosystem services, you name it. So what is the status of the research evidence on which financing models work best for agri-food tech in Africa? And I already know that it's not going to be a straightforward, simple answer, but I'd love to hear some ideas. And yeah, please, between the three of you, just unmute yourself, come in, Andrews, Koen, or DBC.
Let me leave that to the researchers to answer.
Oh, come on, Andrews.
DBC, you're breaking up a little.
I think last year, I think maybe a good place to start will be March 2025. The African Development Bank. Oh dear, so maybe I shouldn't be the one to speak.
No, you're back.
I was going to say, Andrews, you could speak about what a CELI, perhaps what a CELI Africa has done and is doing in the space. So the African Development Bank last year in March. Okay, so in March last year, the African Development Bank convened a conference
sorry to
on
interrupt
scaling
you, DBC.
finance for agri-SMEs. So
perhaps you...
this question.
I didn't get what the BC said,
No.
but I did hear that he mentioned Andrew should answer.
Very small.
Yeah. DBC, we're losing you. So perhaps if you try to switch off your camera, that may stabilize your connection. Koen, I don't know if you wanted to come in. I know that DBC suggested for Andrews to talk about, I think, what AFDB is doing in that space. But Koen, if you have anything to add, right. Otherwise, if we lost DBC, I'll hand over to Lai to move to the next session.
Yeah,
I'm
not a researcher in it, so I'm going a bit out of my expertise. But at least what I can say is from what we know from following the Global Gateway process, which is very European driven, so it might be very different from other projects. But it kind of is built on this idea. We use public finance to then draw in private sector investment. The private sector does not follow. There's been a huge failure about actually getting the private sector investment to happen. I mean, it sounds a bit like magic, but it can work, right? You put in, 5 billion of public money, you crowd in 20 billion of private money. Fantastic model. Does not work at the moment, at least for that instrument. I can kind of imagine that it for other instruments or approaches that might be the same problem, especially again when it comes to the private sector, because of the thin margin, the unpredictability, the volatility and whatnot. Thank you. But I'm happy to hear what Andrew thinks from this, from his perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Koen. I think of the models that are mentioned, the best one that is research-led and will work better for the agri-food sector is blended finance. The reason that happens is it's one, as Dr. Koen says, it allows philanthropic money or public sector money to de-risk what otherwise would have been done by private sector. And take it or leave it, if you don't de-risk, the private sector is not moving. They won't, because for them, it is about profit. So blended finance de-risks it, and I mentioned this earlier. Then once you de-risk, it is important also to defray the cost of reaching out to especially smallholder farmers or SMEs. So these are the two important reasons why blended finance is the thing if you have to be research-led for the agri sector. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andrews and Koen. Perhaps I'll give it one more try to see if DBC's connection is stable enough without video.
Oh dear. I don't know if it will work or not. Can you hear me?
It sounds very promising, so go ahead.
It sounds promising. Good. Yes, but I think I'm not going to say anything more than what Kun and Andrews have said. I think look, there are lots of models in the marketplace right now, a lot being tried to various degrees of success. And I think we'll continue to see a sort of a differentiation. So some things are working, at lower scales for specific value chains, and they're not translating effectively across multiple value chains. And so we will see a differentiation and a specialization of the financing model. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Unfortunately, we're exactly at 50 minutes on the dot. So we need to wrap up this session. But really enjoyed the conversation with the three of you, Andrews, Kun, and DBC. Thank you so much. And I think the topic will stay with us for the remainder of this year, surely also into next year. So very much looking forward to continuing the dialogue and conversation. And once again, thank you very much. And with that, I hand over back to you, Laye.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Thanks,
Thank you,
Thanks,
Catherine.
Andrews.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and your team of panelists for that feature session on innovative financing pathways. So moving on to our next panel on insights and implications for the implementation of CAADP 2026-2035 under Kampala. To take us through this session, I will invite Dr. Augustin Wambuyamje, former Director of Knowledge Systems at Academia 2063, who will be moderating the session. We have around 40 minutes, so over to you, Augustin.
Thank you very much, Laye. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I thought we had 45, but it's fine. We're going to try our best. We're probably the last technical session before the wrap-up session. We have only one presentation. Our topic, as you indicated, is on insights and implications for the implementation of CAADP 2026-2035 under Kampala. For that, a presentation of 10 minutes will be made by Mr. Wonderson Tefere, Senior Associate Scientist at Academia 2063, with a focus on tracking key CAADP indicators and implementation processes. Following which I will have the pleasure of having two panelists, Dr. Hamadi Diop, the CAADP Post-Malambo Process Coordinator, as one of the speakers on the panel, and Ms. Hannah Schroman, Advisor, Global Project Sustainable Agricultural Systems and Policies, AXIS, from the German Agency for International Cooperation, GIZ. So ours is very straightforward. Let me invite Wonderson to take the floor and deliver his presentation. Over to you, Wonderson.
All right. Thank you, moderator. Hello, everyone. Let me make it presentation mode.
Yes, you are getting there, yes.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So my presentation is on tracking key CAADP indicators and implementation process. This is a joint work with colleagues from Academia 2063. And the presentation reviews how Africa performed under CAADP over the past 2 decades. And this is the outline. And in the interest of time, let me proceed directly to the introduction. As we know, since its inception in 2003, CAADP has elevated agriculture on Africa's development agenda. It has created, as we know, shared vision for African countries to drive their own agricultural development. And as part of it, tracking CAADP indicators is a central part of CAADP mutual accountability framework. And the annual trending outlook report is the official CAADP monitoring and evaluation report. And every year, a chapter is dedicated, as we see in the screenshot here, to track key CAADP indicators and implementation process. So I'm here to share key findings of the tracking key CAADP indicators and implementation process published in this 2025 et al. And let me begin by looking at CAADP implementation process, and I will focus on the biennial review. Since 2016, we know 4 cycles have been completed, 4 cycles of the Malabo BR, and the 5th and the final one will be released early next month in February 2026. As we know, biennial review is Africa's main mutual accountability mechanism, and the findings shows that Africa is in the right direction, but not fast enough. As the figures shows, from the first BR to the 4th BR, the Africa's score has increased, but the gap between the actual performance and the benchmark required to be on track has been widened. And several factors can be mentioned, and one of the main challenge is data unavailability. For example, in the 4th BR, 40% of the record data was missing, and this has created binding constraints. And as the chart shows here, it's only a few countries that have reported low missing data rates, while a number of countries have faced a challenge from a data availability point of view. So,
Wonderson, can you please, check that this is really in presentation mode? I thought I was the only one who was having the impression. Can you put it in presentation mode?
Is it not in presentation mode?
It doesn't look like for me.
There is another, it's a multiple window.
You have, yeah.
So, okay, let me disconnect.
Yes, now it's better.
Oh.
Just go back to it. I don't know how you are doing it, but I'm having the impression that we're not getting there yet.
Wonderson, please click use slideshow.
Okay. Where do I get use the slide? Okay, all right. How about now?
We are seeing you. The presentation has disappeared now.
Ibnu, I clicked use slideshow, and this is what I have.
Perhaps I'll share the presentation for you for the sake of time.
All right. Okay, please do.
Okay. Thanks, Imno. I think
So shall I proceed, Augustine?
Yes, please.
So what we have seen what the implementation process looked like by focusing the biennial review, and we now turn to CAADP indicators to examine the outcomes achieved by focusing on the various CAADP indicators. So next slide, please. Next slide. Next, please. Yes, and next, please. Yes. So when we talk about progress on CAADP indicators, there are one more but please. Yes. When we talk about the progress on CAADP indicators, we know that Malabo CAADP uses a structured result framework that has certain indicators that are distributed across the 3 levels. And the ReSAKSS website and the annual trend and outlook report provides data and analytics for 27 of these 38 indicators. And these 27 indicators have considerable overlap with the Malabo BR indicators. So tracking the performance of the result framework indicators can be seen as a synonymous to tracking the Malabo BR indicators. Next, please. So let's see the performance from wealth creation point of view. And the findings shows that Africa has shown strong growth during early CAADP period, but that has stagnated during Malabo. For example, the GDP per capita income between 2003 and 2024 have shown like a 25% increase, but most of that growth occurred in the early CAADP periods. In addition, the result shows that there is large difference across regions and country groups. Next slide. In terms of food and nutrition security, the findings underscore that the undernourishment declined during early CAADP periods, but it rose again during Malabo period, primarily due to shocks and conflicts, including the COVID-19, El Nino, and trade disruptions because of wars and so on. So nearly 20% of African countries, which means 1 in 5, have been undernourished in 2023. From child malnutrition point of view, it has declined during Malabo, but it remains high, especially when we compare it with other regions in the world. Child stunting, underweight, and wasting is still quite high. Next slide. Poverty, it continues to fall, but at a slower pace during Malabo, and it remains high. For example, the chart shows that except Northern Africa, all the other geographic regions, particularly Central and Eastern Africa, has a higher poverty rate, although it has recorded a decline during the Malabo period. Next slide. Agricultural growth and performance, agricultural value added has grown steadily over the CAADP period. But when we see the agricultural value added growth, the Malabo period was on average 3.5%. When we compare it with the CAADP target of 6%, we can see that still there is a long way to go to achieve the CAADP target. But in addition, it's only a few countries that have exceeded the target, while a number of other countries during the whole CAADP period were unable to meet the 6% CAADP target. Next. And this has got to do with the productivity of labor and land. Although both labor and land productivity have grown during the Malabo period and also during the CAADP period, the way the rate of growth has been small. And in addition, there is a persistent productivity gap among regions and countries. Next. When it comes to intra-Africa agricultural trade, during Malabo, trade has increased only by 60%. From 2003 to 2024, it has increased, it has more than doubled. But when we see the Malabo performance, it has been 60%, which is far below the Malabo target of tripling trade. Still, Africa is the intra-Africa trade within Africa is less than 20%, implying that Africa trades for about 80% of its import demand with the rest of the world. This shows the presence of a huge demand that can be achieved if things are in the right direction. But what we see here is not only the intra-Africa agricultural trade is low, but it is concentrated with few countries, especially Southern Africa or South Africa, so that it's only a few countries that have dominated intra-Africa trade. In addition, Africa in general trades 20% of the total trade. Next. Government agricultural growth in Africa was the highest relatively in early CADA period, but throughout the whole CADA period, it remained below the 10% target. During Maputo, it was about 3.1%, which means the share of government agricultural expenditure in total expenditure during Maputo was 3.1%. While in Malabo, it further declined to 2.5%. When you compare it with the 10% CADAP target, we can see that it is far lower than the target set during Maputo and Malabo period. From country point of view, it's very few countries that consistently met this 10% target, such as Ethiopia, Malawi, and Mali, while a number of other countries were not able to meet this 10% target throughout the CADA period. Gert was saying earlier that Africa should invest smarter, not just more, which means beyond the amount, quality of spending is also critical, and that has to be one of the issues that should be considered during the Kampala period. So these are the indicators that I've selected to show you how Africa is performing. So what are the lessons? And this will be discussed in the conclusion part. Next. So the summary and implication. Next. So the summary, what the evidence shows, as we have seen, is that strong gains has been achieved during the early CADA periods, but that has slowed or reversed in Malabo period for a number of reasons, including shocks. Agriculture has grown over the CADA period, but productivity and trade gains were shorter than the CADA ambitions. Public investment remained insufficient, both in quantity and quality. We have seen that biennial review has strengthened accountability. However, data gap persists throughout the BR period cycles. And also shocks exposed vulnerabilities in the agri-food systems. So the implication for Kampala is Africa needs to strengthen the political and institutional capacity so that the slow or reverse trends that happened in Malabo period can be reversed. The same holds true that Africa should accelerate agricultural productivity by prioritizing high-impact subsectors using evidence-based approach. Africa needs to leverage the African Continental Free Trade Agreement to boost intra-Africa agricultural trade and also foster regional integration. There is also a need to increase and improve efficiency of public spending, also strengthen national data ecosystem, and also strengthen agri-food system resilience to shocks. Next. So, next, please.
It's over.
Yeah, but I want to just emphasize that, Ibro, please, the last page. Yeah, I want to encourage everyone to visit the ReSAKSS website. There are a lot of data and analytics, including the data for tracking key CADAP indicators. So this is what I would like to make at the end. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Wanderson. We're sorry for the technical glitches, and this presentation is always very attractive because it touches on one of the key issues that Africa struggles with. How do we track consistently what we're doing, how much we're performing, how on track are we? I think this chapter is very important for that conversation. Thank you for your delivery. Now, let me turn to the two panelists that we have present today. We have Dr. Job here, also, as I indicated, Ms. Hannah Schulman from GIZ. I will start with you, Hamadi. You, as the CADEP Post Malabo Process Coordinator, you witness from within. How the conversation that started some time back, reflecting on what happened under Malabo, and how going into Kampala could some of this knowledge be carried into the process. So we're talking to someone who is really in it, and I wonder if you have an answer to this question: how can a researcher translate cadet monitoring results into clear policy messages and options for decision makers? Over to you, Dr. Job.
No, thank you, Augustin, and thank you, Wonderson, for this very powerful presentation. It's always a pleasure to listen to you when you talk about the biennial review outcome with a passion. I think the question you're raising, Augustin, can be elevated. And when I say can be elevated, is usually why science results are not being taken care by policymakers. There were too many issues regarding this question. Number one, I think we need to translate monitoring results into policies. Researchers need to stop treating the binary review issue as just a statistical report, because for the time being, that's what is happening. We're not using the results basically to revise our policies, to have more impact on our community. So we must instead present it as a compliance narrative that will link, let's say, country technical performance directly to national development goals. But for this to happen, I think the most effective strategy would be to continue to use that peer pressure based on the scorecard, where policymakers respond to peer comparison, which has been the case at least for now. But maybe using more the traffic light system, where someone can visually see a country in red and say, okay, why are we in red? And then use this to trigger basically accountability. So we also must figure out a way to present the finding, specifically during the joint sectoral reviews, because the timing is very crucial. If the data lands before the budget planning cycles, it allows us to identify, let's say, specific investment gaps and shape resource allocation. However, if the data lands after the budget cycle, it is just a history. It has no impacts. So we need to align our finding also directly to the budget processes to offer real actionable action for decision makers. In my previous, in some of my previous basically jobs, we looked at what are the criteria decision makers utilize to take into consideration research outcomes. There are three key factors usually they look at. Number one, they look at their constituencies. Okay, if I take this decision, what would be the impact on the constituency? Because if the constituency is not happy about the decision, you know what happened, because some of those decision makers are politicians. Number two, they'll do like some kind of balancing between the cost of implementing that policies and the cost of not implementing that policy. And number three, they look at the feasibility of implementing that policy. So we need to factor also those three elements into the process to make sure that not only we address the issue of timing, when do we get the data to the decision makers, but also try also to look at those how those three issues balance out. On the peer pressure, I recall when you and I were at Auda Nepad, we were involved. I was involved in the first BR At the time, we were designing the indicators, going through a certain number of processes. But something that stayed in my mind at the time was the fact that right after the BR, the first BR was presented to the head of state. I had the opportunity to travel with Dr. Mayaki at the time to Rome. So we were paying a visit to the Rome-based UN agencies, and at the time we happened to meet we happened to attend a meeting at IFAD. IFAD was organizing its global governance meeting. So on the side of the meeting, we met with we had a meeting with the ministers, African Minister of Agriculture, and also some of the diplomatic ambassadors who were based there. And Dr. Mayaki presented some of the outcome of the BR. The first reaction was, I'm not going to name the country, but there is a minister from one country who took the floor and thanked the African Union for pushing for the BR. And he indicated that after his president flew back from the summit, the first order of business was the president called him to his office and asked him, why are we in red? So, you know, when the president sees that they are in red, the minister maybe voluntarily will forget that he is the one who communicated the data to the African Union. So stories start happening. But make story short, the president gave instructions to his minister to make sure that the resources are allocated in certain areas so that when he goes next time to the summit, he feels good because maybe some improvement will show up. So I think the BR has that possibility in terms of peer pressure that we need to advocate. Let me stop here for now, and then I'll submit. Thank you.
Let me stay with you, Dr. Job, still on that particular point. Can it also be that researchers using the BR do exactly what they're supposed to do, formulate all the possible recommendations that will help politicians or decision makers make sound decisions, evidence-based decisions, and that what happened next is no longer their responsibility? Are the researchers supposed to go that one extra mile?
Well, you know, in my career, I started with being a scientist researcher from my country of origin. Then I went into academia, and then I moved into development. Some of the things I have learned is that when you are a researcher, mostly in our continent, you don't do most of our research centers, I will say, are not doing like a fundamental research. Just when I say fundamental research, I'm talking about just doing the research for the pleasure of doing research. You do research on demand. My country will tell me, and actually I will tell you that next week I will be, for example, in Mauritania. And the reason why I'll be in Mauritania is because Mauritania has a big big fishery sector. And one of the resources that is really important for Mauritania is what we call cephalopods. So the cephalopod generates 60% of the fisheries basically revenues. So they asking a group of scientists to come to reflect on how they can make this sustainable. They're not asking you to do like a research for the pleasure of research, but they want you to do a research on this specific sector so that it will pay dividend for them. So those are the type of research type where decision makers really embrace basically the results and try to implement them. But here we're talking about the BR results, where we're giving like advices on a certain number of issues. Those issues will change from a country to another country. So some country will pick up maybe what's relevant to them, what is less sensitive in terms of impact on their communities, and then implement it. So yes, researchers have a responsibility to do research and stop there, but in some cases, there were some issue of sensitization that goes with the outcome that will help basically some of the decision makers to understand better and maybe have a better informed decision.
Thank you very much. Now let me turn to Hannah. Are you there, Hannah? I saw you a while ago.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome back. The questions to you, the first question to you is that implementation of CADEP requires robust analytical evidence to inform the development of national agri-food systems investment. GIZ has been a very strong partner in support of CADEP from the early days. How has your organization supported domestication of CADEP through evidence generation in recent past? And what lessons have emerged from that particular support? Over to you.
Thank you very much for the question, Augustin. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. And also a big thank you to Wonderson and Hamadi for the presentation and the insightful reactions already. I think chapter 18 of the ATOL really underscores the importance of tracking CADEP indicators to inform further policy decisions in the further CADEP cycle. Of course, I think it is also quite evident that this comes at a critical time where we are eagerly waiting for the results of the last Malabo era biannual review to be presented, and at the same time curiously waiting for the new results framework for the Kampala Declaration to be shared. We know that indicators carry a lot of power because what gets measured is quite more likely to get done. Of course, in order to know what to do to improve results on those indicators, we need to base policies on robust evidence. And acknowledging this need, in fact, we have been working with Academia 2063 and other partners in the past to strengthen the evidence base for CADEP domestication on national and continental level. As you indicated, Augustin, on behalf of the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, GIZ has a strong track record working on agri-food systems in Africa, on the one hand on a national level, but also on a continental level. And in addition to an extensive bilateral portfolio, which contributes to selected elements of the of CADEP, we've been a key partner to CADEP since 2008, recognizing its key relevance in defining future-oriented evidence-based policy priorities and goals. One recent example that I would like to mention here is our cooperation with Academia 2063 to provide strong country diagnostics of the status quo, potential milestones and policy opportunities in Kenya and Togo. And what became quite evident here is that, of course, both countries are at very different stages of their NAIP cycle and therefore have very different needs and applications for data and evidence. Kenya currently developing its latest NASIP, which will already be Kampala compliant and therefore directly taking up evidence that is created, and Togo already having a NAIP that has been concluded in the NAIP era, and therefore looking at data to implement this in a Kampala compliant manner. So country context and status in the NAIP cycle, in the CADEP cycle, differs from country to country and underscores the relevance of context-specific evidence. I also want to use this opportunity to highlight the relevance of non-state actors in data gathering, because often, especially in more challenging contexts, they are closer to target communities such as rural households and farming communities, and can provide critical data that complements government data. And this is why we have been working with non-state actors in several countries to strengthen their involvement in the biannual review reporting cycles. As on the other hand, robust data provides a critical anchor for them to hold governments accountable to the commitments that they agreed on in the Kampala Declaration and previous declarations. In addition, I think this evidence is critical to be discussed at relevant fora, because we know the pure availability of data does not necessarily equate to implementation and policy priorities that take up this data. And that's why we support I'm sorry, I'm being told that my computer needs to restart. Let me just try and push this. So that's why we also support multi-stakeholder fora on national and regional level to discuss findings of this data and increase uptake of evidence that has been created.
Thank you, Hannah. Do you want to start your computer, or I carry with the second question?
I think it should be fine. I think I was
Yeah.
able to push it.
Very good. So thank you. I know you will not be speaking on behalf of all the partners. You will be speaking from the perspective of your own constituency. But the question is, what can development partners in general do to strengthen country-level data systems for decision-making? Just building on what you just explained.
Thank you, Augusta. And I think I would like to build on where I ended with the previous question. Of course, I can only speak for GIZ, but I think there's two elements in this question that we need to be cognizant of. One is the challenge of data availability. Of course, we need high quality, robust data that can be used to inform reporting of relevant indicators. But we know that availability is not enough, and often the interpretation and translation of this data into evidence-based policy remains a challenge. Policy decisions are not always and not automatically taking into consideration this data. So I think as development partners, we need to be very cognizant of both of those aspects. And I wanted to highlight one specific example that GIZ has been working on behalf of BMZ. We have collaborated with the Berlin-based Humboldt University, who are very strong on policy modeling, and Kenyan partners to strengthen capacities for translating data into policy and modeling certain policy opportunities and decisions in order to really strengthen the uptake of evidence into actual evidence-based policies. I would also mention, though, another aspect that I think, especially as development partners, we have to pay attention to in our project design, because, of course, we have a responsibility in ensuring that our very own project level indicators and the data that they gather to report is aligned to country-level reporting systems, such as the biannual review, such as other relevant systems, in order to ensure close alignment to national priorities. And I think much of this is reflected in the ATOR chapter. We'll make sure that we keep contributing to those national data systems in the implementation of the Kampala Declaration. Very much look forward on taking those insights up in our work.
Very good. Thank you very much, Hannah. Let me turn to Dr. Job now. What innovations in data collection and analysis could significantly improve CADEP tracking quality and timeliness?
Augustine, thank you again for this question. I think, in my view, regarding innovation, the biggest bottleneck we face is the lag time and the quality of the national survey data. I think to fix this, we need to embrace two major shifts toward what I call digital transformation. First, I think we must move to a full adoption of the EBR. It's something that has been ongoing. We have been improving every cycle, but we need to have it fully adopted as a platform. So we have to move away from those manual Excel sheets really to automated systems. The technology is available, the technology is here, so we should not be shying away from using it. I know like every single cycle we make a major jump. A lot of countries are using it, but it has to be adopted. So crucially, this include the interoperability of the platform, linking the EBR to national statistical offices. And I think there are some technologies that are out there like the API that can help to do it. So this will help to automate the validation rules that flags errors instantly. Sometimes we have a lot of, in statistics, we speak a lot about garbage in, garbage out. So if you have a poor quality data that get into a system, also you have a poor outcomes. So we need to really ensure that the data decision makers see it as a trustworthy. So we must really make the system operational. So second, we need also to integrate remote sensing and Earth observatory. So, and here I speak under the control of Dr. Racine, who is connected. So I apologize in advance if I'm using this word, I'm misusing this word. But we should not be relying on 3 years old surveys to measure dynamic issues like climate resilience and crop productivity. When satellite data can provide that information in a near real time, basically. So this shift will help to replace our manual estimation with digital geostatistical data. And in my view, this is one of the way to achieve maybe the quality and the timeliness necessary for effective data tracking. So for me, these are the two things really I can see as innovation in terms of improving the BR data. But this cannot happen if you don't create the capacity for people to do it. So in the continent, we do a lot of things. Many things are projectized. And then when the project leaves, the current capacity also disappears. And Maputo was a brilliant example of that. During Maputo, we had a trust fund that was available, and the trust fund was funding capacity within the AU institution, within the ReSAKSS, and then even at the national level. And that capacity was strengthening basically the delivery of CADEP. As soon as MDTF disappeared, all the capacity eroded. And this created all the challenges we went through Malabo. Hopefully, in terms of moving forward, at least in the area of data, if we can build a capacity that is sustainable in the long run, this will help us also to improve significantly, not only on the quality of the data, but also on the outcome. So let me stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamadi. And maybe before Dr. Lai reminds us that time is up, I wanted to stay with you. Hamadi, you mentioned the use of satellite technology to give some real-time information on some of the performance area that we spend time struggling to collect information on. You made reference to the fact that Racine is here. Yes, his team, he's doing a very interesting work in using satellite use various technology, combining satellite and remote sensing technology to be able to help with the forecast and so on and so forth. Let's say you use that to hope that you are going to improve the quality of the data collected to inform the BR process for a particular set of indicators. But how do you think the validation of that will happen? Because countries will still claim that they have the ownership of the data. They'll have to validate it first before it goes to final dissemination. How do you see that happening?
Well, in my view, when I say you use this, I'm talking about using at the national level. you create the capacity at
At
the
the
national.
national, yes,
Yeah,
okay.
you're creating the capacity at the national level for country to use your geospatial, basically, satellite imagery data to. I mean, now we're talking about precision agriculture. Let's just pick up the issue of precision agriculture. We're speaking significantly in the continent on issues of increasing production productivity. But now you have some technologies that are available here that help you to look at the data. I mean, to survey basically using drones. You're basically fueled, and with those drones, you can have the quality of the soil, you can map it, you can create like the right amount of fertilizer to improve your production productivity. So, I mean, the technology is here. We should not trying to move into the 21st century with technology of the 1600. Countries are, I mean, everybody's improving, and I don't know why we holding ourselves backward. If we can really strengthen our way of doing business.
Thank you. Let me go to Hannah for her last words of closing. Closing insights from you, Hannah?
Thank you, Augustin. I think just to keep it very brief, I want to highlight again the duality of the need at place here. We need to strengthen data availability, but really also the capacities and systems to translate the data into real policies. And that has to do a lot with structures, coordination. So I think this link really needs to be strengthened sometimes, taking up smart ways of data gathering with an inclusive set of stakeholders. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Hamadi, what's your final take?
No, I think my final take is that we need to be ambitious, and then we need also to have the resources to reach our ambition. I mean, the technology is there, the human resources are there, but we just need to connect we need to create the capacity for that human resource to deliver on our ambition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your both final takes have been documented. They will be forwarded to African Union for implementation. Thank you very much, Lai. I think we have concluded our session. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Augustin, and your panelists for that insightful conversation. And we are now moving on to our final panel, our high-level closing panel, to help us make sense of the discussions that we have had over the past 3 days. To take us through this session, please welcome Academia 2063's Managing Director, Dr. Debisi Araba.
Well, thank you very much, Lai. Greetings, everyone, and thank you again for joining us over this last couple of days to look through the report, Moving the Technology Frontiers in African Food Systems. Joining us today is a panel of eminent personalities, and I'll just introduce them and bring them on one by one. Beginning with Mr. Ayo Shotiri, Managing Director, Bank of Agriculture in Nigeria. Ayo, if you are there, can you indicate if you are there and online?
Yes, Dr. Debisi.
Okay, wonderful.
Many thanks for the opportunity.
Sure. You're a man on the move, literally on the move. And so thanks for pre-warning us that you would have to keep your camera off. But thank you for making the time, squeezing the time in between your busy schedule to engage with us today. Now, this report underscores that technological progress must be inclusive to deliver system-wide benefits. Nigeria has made notable efforts to promote mechanisms for the dissemination of technology. In the next decade, in your opinion, and based on the work that you're doing, what effective mechanisms will be essential for Nigeria to empower producer organizations, SMEs, entrepreneurs, and youth-led enterprises to facilitate access to and deepen the impact of these emerging technologies? Over to you.
Thank you ever so much, Dr. Davisi. This is a very important question, and the report rightly emphasizes that technology alone doesn't transform systems. Access, adoption, and equitable distribution actually does. You know, in the Nigerian agricultural context, the agricultural transformation over the next decade will depend on mechanisms that don't just disseminate technology, but actively empower those who need it the most. Let me highlight 4 strategic mechanisms that will be essential. Number 1, we have to continue to build adaptive financing architectures, right? Traditional lending models exclude the very innovators we need, who are the youths, and I would say agripreneurs. They lack collateral, you know, SMEs face prohibitive, you know, interest rates, and producer organizations struggle with rigid repayment schedules. Second part, digital innovators, you know, developing precision agriculture tools and logistics platform need patient capital that recognizes their growth trajectory. At the Bank of Agriculture, we are redesigning our approach to include different blended financial instruments and also explore, you know, risk sharing arrangement with other development financial institutions, Nigeria, industry, and also even the guarantee agencies that are in country as well. Number 2, technology brokerage platforms the bridge on the last mile for all our farmers. They are bringing agricultural technologies in Nigeria. However, they often remain in research institutions or in pilot. Was established regional innovation hubs that serve as intermediaries, translating complex technologies into practical applications, providing hands-on training, and offering ongoing technical support. Some of these hubs should be embedded within farming communities, staffed by extension workers who understand both technology and the local context. And at the Bank of Agriculture, we have, you know, intentionally decided to build out a few of these hubs. We have 110 locations across the country, 1% in rural districts, giving us closer proximity to the farmers. And we have decided to dedicate 1 floor to promote digital technology and agri-tech. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for enlightening us about these four areas that you are working on at the Bank of Agriculture, Mr. Shote. Of course, we're also aware that you are leading the recapitalization of the institution, and so we wish you the very best. You know, as you launch into this new phase of strategic investments and using the bank as a lever for catalytic change in Nigeria. Switching gears, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Professor Dorothy Okello, the Dean of the School of Engineering at Makerere University, and also a member of the Malabo Montpellier panel. Professor Okello, agriculture research and development investment is a critical determinant of long-term productivity. However, we know that, you know, it remains far below targets. Not just in Africa, but not just, you know, below African Union targets, but global benchmarks. What are some ways in which African countries can combine strategic investment in science and digital infrastructure, inclusive mechanisms for technology dissemination, and robust governance and accountability to ensure that we accelerate this transition from technology adoption to technology leadership? Could you share some insights with us?
All right. Thank you so much, first of all, for the kind invitation to be part of this, and greetings to everyone, and a happy New Year. I think we are still early enough when this matters. I want to really first set the stage. A lot was shared through this conference that I want to build upon in terms of getting back to the question that you asked and linking to what was already shared. One is that in terms of innovation and what more we need to do, it's important that we look at this through an agri-food systems lens and not simply the public research alone, or research, public or private, for that matter. Because while R&D is essential, and based on the R&D from an academic setting that I come from, it is really critical. It is also true, and also comes out, I think, quite strongly in the ATO report as well, that this is just one part of the broader innovation ecosystem. And so it's important that we look at the policies, markets, finance, infrastructure, and really critically to this. And again, I'm happy at the strength with which it came out, not only in the report, but also in the discussions that we have had hence in this conference. The issue of the role of private sector and what it will take, I think, for private sector to come to the table that has been discussed. So this really, in terms of driving real impact, there's a need, therefore, for our researchers to be connected with what's happening in the real world, if I may use the term, connecting to investors, entrepreneurs, and so that we are balancing the effort and energy that we are putting in terms of the R&D side with actually what is needed in the community, with the smallholder farmers, and what the investors also are looking will change the game for them. And this is also supported, as was shared, by the new tool, the Agriculture R&D System Capability Index, which actually demonstrated that if we do measurements by spending ratios alone, we don't get actually the true picture. And that what really matters is the system capacity, the human capital, the institutional depth, and also stable funding. So with that background, basically, and tapping into my position as Dean, speaking from that perspective, I think it's really critically important that Africa invests in the next generation of scientists and innovators. It's something that I can say we see very pertinent, even at the level of Makerere University, if I may look at it there, but also in the studies and even the work that came out in the reports that this conference has been based on. And it is important, therefore, that if we are really to have a future-ready research system that is responsive to our needs and also aligns with what goals that the CADEP is setting out and the Kampala Declaration, that not only do we need the technical knowledge, which we do need, okay, but we also need diversity, we need interdisciplinarity, and this is something I think very much about. And we also need to build innovation or leverage innovation capacity across the emerging fields. I'm very happy there was a lot related to that data science that has emerged from this conference already, but we also need to look into areas of synthetic biology. How do we move faster? Climate adaptation is an issue which has also been quite highlighted here. So what does this mean? This means that therefore we need to scale up graduate education and training, not only in terms of what we are teaching, how we are teaching, what are the linkages we are having with industry, with private sector, with other entities, with the seed companies. We've heard a lot about that as well in this. And also we need to address the gender gaps so that we have all perspectives being brought on board. We also need to address the generation gap. If I again put it in the university context that I come from, we have all these very senior professors and everything, but we have all these really young, budding, passionate, for lack of a better word, just to emphasize my point, let me call them kids, but I know they will not be happy with that term. But just really to emphasize, how do we bridge that gap? How do we bring everyone to the table? And how do we create pathways, career pathways so that we can keep our young talent. So whether one wants to end up in basic research, whether one wants to go on the side of more technical in the field, action researchers would actually call it, what are the spaces we are providing for this to be to happen? And also very, very important is fostering youth creativity and entrepreneurship. I know a lot is spoken about, okay, the youth don't want to get their hands dirty and everything, but with the technology that we have today, and I think it's somebody who said that we need to use 21st century technology. And that technology also is attractive to the youth and can also be an avenue for how they actually come and play a key role in the agri-food system, which is very important for them. And I think what is also another key area is how are we grounding innovation in the local realities so that we are actually responsive to the on-ground needs, especially since largely, yes, we do have the commercial farms and commercial entities, but we also have, and we rely quite heavily on smallholder farmers and cottage industries. So how are we understanding what innovation solutions, whether it is about getting quality seeds, the statistics have been shared during this conference, they're very minimal, interesting ways of going about collateral so that you have financing. I think Augustine shared a really good example. How do you build that trust so people know you can do what it is? And AI, that has also come out quite good, is a good way of building records where otherwise the traditional methods of collateral would apply. And here also there's the gender issue because maybe if you look at it, women don't own land in many customs, many cultures, but AI can be used to actually track the productivity that they've had over time, and that then converted into some equivalent type of collateral. One of the things that I always push my students back on is a model that I have seen in the US, maybe it's elsewhere, where you have all these billboards which say adopt a highway. And what I push back is adopt a village, all right, and see how we can use and leverage technology and innovation. And innovation is not only about the technology, but access to markets, getting the best out of our value chains and the whole process through. How do we get that? Because that will then help us address our local challenges. And with the tweak here or there, these can be translatable because really the issue of smallholder farmers is not something that's only unique to Uganda, but it's something that is broader across the continent. So what do we need to do moving forward? And I know I've taken a bit more time than I should have.
It's fine, please. As you wrap up, yes.
Yes, just to wrap up, looking forward, I think one of the key things, and I know there was a lot of debate also around this in terms of the CADE processes leading up to the Kampala Declaration. What should be an appropriate target for our R&D investment? The 1%, and I really want to thank my co-author for chapter 12, Dr. Gatjan, what the differences that clearly come out when you say our target is 1%. So how do we, come up with matrices that can really, first of all, motivate everyone to get into the space and see a space for themselves? How do we integrate more and additional meaningful matrices that allow us to be more accountable, learning oriented, and actually evidence-based in terms of policy decisions with long-term impacts? I want to end with saying the issue of in-country data collection and analytical capability is really, really key. And we need to have more such tools developed so that we can actually guide future investments and policy reforms from local levels to the continent-wide agenda that we have through the Kampala Declaration. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Wonderful.
Sorry, I stretched over my time a bit more.
No apologies, please. Thank you. Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
so much for all that you do, Prof. Thank you for your contribution to the Kampala CADA process. And also all the work that you're doing through the Malabo Montpellier panel and the excellent leadership that you're demonstrating at Makerere University. Thank you. Thank you very much for your insights and thoughts. Moving on, I would like to bring on our next panelist, Mr. Odd Erik Arnesen. Odd is the Minister Counselor for Regional Food Security. He's also the Regional Food Security Envoy at the Norwegian Embassy in Tanzania. He's also the co-chair of the CAADP Donor Partners Coordination Group. Odd, Norway's strategy for engagement with African countries highlights its innovative bilateral climate partnership, and the partnership with Tanzania as an example of integrated efforts spanning food security, health, renewable energy, natural resource management, etc., is quite commendable and innovative. Now, drawing on that experience and given the declining availability of development finance as we see that space shrinking around the world, what role can bilateral development partners play in strengthening innovation ecosystems in scientific institutions, especially with a focus not just on introducing new technologies, but building and firming up the systems that enable their effective and widespread use? What are your thoughts on this, Odd?
No, thank you for inviting me to this conference. It's really been a gold mine when it comes to all the information and the useful discussions coming out of the deliberation over these days. What I want to bring to this table is perhaps the story of how a development partner operates in a country. How do we see this territory that you are describing, and where do we make our investments in a better manner? Budgets are shrinking, etc. We all know this, so we have to get more for less. And that means how do we actually act as good partners to government and government institution, private sector, etc. Donors are different, and this is sort of a take from a small donor like Norway. We've been in Tanzania for 60 years. We supported Sokoine University for more than 50 years. We had a celebration last year. So we have invested in research, but that's been the traditional capacity building of institutions, research programs, research collaboration on various programs. And that's good. That's good in itself, but we need to see what would be the impact here on how government implements its policies and achieves its own targets. And that's where we see we need to think a bit differently, because we're also operating in sectors that depend on the knowledge generated in Tanzania. So I'm just going to present you something here, which is our take on this. I've been in this business since 1983. I've seen different donor models and partnerships coming and going, integrated rural development programs, sector programs. We're now at a different stage of, let's say, confusion with all the cuts, and where do we find ourselves? Where do we find our partnership with private sector and governments? So if I'm able to share my screen here, this is just a not too complicated snapshot. I don't know whether you see it actually. Are you able to see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. So we're in a situation where we have, like most donors, different channels. We contribute to the development of development efforts in Tanzania. We have the UN, we have Norwegian institutions, we have Tanzanian institutions, we have civil society, we have research institutions as such. Let's say we have around 20 different partners or channels ranging along this spectrum. And let's say in the food security space, climate food security space, we would be talking about 31 to 35 programs and projects that are not planned together. They are planned through different mechanisms and processes. And how do you make sense of this for ourselves, but also for the government of Tanzania? That's a big challenge. And how do we get the synergies that we're all trying to get more value for money? So just to run you quickly through this, I'm not going to take project by project, But the overarching framework for this is the NDC, to build capacities to implement or formulate the NDC, but also to implement it through the various sector ministries. So we're working with agriculture, blue economy, and on the energy side, but also environment as a part of this. When you talk about climate, you're also talking about how do you get climate financing into the various activities in Tanzania, whether it's government or private sector. You need a system. So we are supporting the establishment of the National Carbon Monitoring Center the last 12 years. That is framing carbon financing, but they need technical expertise. So this is a link to capacity building within Tanzanian and international institutions, but in a more direct manner than the old sort of university programs. So we are funding a program through the Tanzanian Research Council, which is COSTECH, on climate adaptation mitigation. Together with SIDA, it's around $2 million a year, competitive program, but with clear sort of focus on climate issues. So through this, we are building the capacity within the government structure, systems, and partnerships to handle climate financing, which is relevant also for private sector. Then it's to build the capacity in the sectors. And I just want here to focus on the ag sector, where we have Tanzania Agricultural Research Institute, which is the government research institute together with Sokoine, on specific climate smart agricultural technologies and how to use them through the various programs that we support. And one specific program that we have been supporting for 12 years is the Southern Agricultural Growth Corridor of Tanzania, which is now expanding to be the agricultural growth corridors of Tanzania. So there's a number of growth corridors that also have a climate, let's say, there's a blueprint for the corridors. There's also a green print, including climate for these corridors. So they are working with academic institutions to support this type of capacity building for green investments. Then I'll just try and focus on how do we then work with private sector, because the whole AGCOT corridor investment framework is to attract private investments. And how do we ensure that we get capacity building research built into this? And we are here linking it to climate financing and the capacity within government to support and facilitate for climate financing and carbon trading. This is what we call local climate action through UNCDF to test how do we get international climate funding to the local government. The local government in Tanzania is responsible for extension. It's not the Ministry of Agriculture, it's the local government that hires extension workers. So they need funding, they need capacity to support these extension workers and farmers with new technologies. So the SAGCOT corridor works with local governments and private sector at the local level to ensure that we have an option of climate smart technologies that the farmers can use. So to us, this is a sort of an ecosystem of our programs that we work with partners like the UN, the civil society. And since this is government policies we are supporting, this becomes the alignment. It's not a big sector program, multi-partners, it's an alignment that everybody does to the policies at the various levels that we as funders try then to support through regular meetings with the partners. I just want, if I may, to
sure. As you wrap up.
No, I mean, through these partners, we have come up with innovative new farming systems that based on practice through all these partners, since we are in Tanzania, we call it Mzuri farming, which also brings in carbon financing and biochar into climate smart agriculture through these partners. What we are struggling with is the private sector, and I've been supporting value chain development in Tanzania through projects the last 15 years. And the donors it's a very fragmented donor society here. With our programs, some decided at headquarters, some decided by institutions like NORAD in Oslo, and some by the embassy. So we sat down with our partners and thought, okay, what brings together private sector? What is if you think about one thing, it's the product. It's the crop turned into a commodity that is sold in a market in one way or another, or processed into another higher level type of commodity that reaches the consumer. What we have done earlier is to try, and we're still doing it, providing support to individual companies through guarantee funds, etc. But the risk for the private sector or the company itself is very often upstream, downstream. We have huge companies here that might pull out of Tanzania. They have the processing power, but they don't have the supply chain. Because farmers are not getting the right technologies. They're not, the economy is not there for them to invest in new climate smart technologies, etc. And we as donors, we tend to support sort of a general climate smart ag agenda. Here we go into, with private sector, say, what do you need to grow? What are the technologies? What are the supply to the farmers that we need to work on? Is it new seeds? Is it the seed systems? Okay, who can partner with that? And now the donors here, at least some, have agreed that, okay, what the farmers sell is a product. It's rice, it's soy. Let's focus on that commodity and see what does it take to realize the potential of soy in Tanzania, for example. So this is a commodity compact that we are working on, where we want also the science partners to come in. That brings in various elements in this, because this is what Tanzania is going to sell. This is what Tanzania farmers are going to produce. And we need to know more about the specifics. So my point here is we are going from this complexity of this triangle. Again, we are trying to think outside the box. Probably have to think outside the triangle also when it comes to that. But in a new way of organizing ourselves, which is much simpler than sector programs or big research programs. No, it's about need to know to grow business. And the business has to guide us, not the other way. And that takes a mind shift for many of us. But we are a group of donors who wants to work on this in specific commodities, which makes it easier also to measure whether we are going in the right direction when it comes to the variables that decide whether you are in the market or not.
Thank you so much.
I think I'll stop there. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ott Andersen, for giving us, an overview of your portfolio, of the Norwegian portfolio in Tanzania. Dr. Araba, are you back? I'm jumping in because we're facing some technical issues, but while waiting for our MD to return to the meeting, I would now like to move to our next speaker, Dr. Kehinde Makinde. Are you there?
Yes, please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for joining us. So I have one question for you, and I hope you can let us know your thoughts in 2 to 3 minutes. Over the past couple of days, we have talked about the role of technology in advancing agri-food system transformation in Africa. The report underscores that technological process must be inclusive to deliver system-wide benefits. Now we are in the implementation phase of the Kampala era. In your view, looking at the 6 commitments, what would be some of the key interventions that countries can prioritize to ensure tangible, inclusive, and meaningful progress? Over to you.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Butake. I would like to first thank all the panelists and indeed the organizers, of this meeting. I'm indeed very grateful to have the privilege to represent Dr. Iwi, on this panel. Now, I believe what we've had today has been very encouraging. It confirms the fact that Africa does not lack ideas, for science or innovation. We have a wealth of proven solutions across seeds, soil, digital tools, mechanization, and all of that. But it also confirms something deeper. Across all the rich presentations, one message has been clear to me that our challenge is not about what works, but the challenge is how to make what works reach everyone who needs it. So we're not struggling with maybe innovation gaps, say we are struggling with delivery gaps. So I feel that we will continue to need strong research institutions. We'll continue to have ambitious policy frameworks, like the kind that we're talking about. And then we need to have some youth energy and digital readiness, and alongside this, we need to also prioritize increasing our donor government interest. So for me, what appears to be weak will be the institutional pathways, for our scaling. And then I think we also will need some coordinated delivery platforms and joint implementation frameworks between research, government, and private sector. That is where Africa's technology future will be won or lost. The post-Malabo agenda and the current reforms that we have at CGIAR, the NARIs and the partners, they all offer a big opportunity. And we certainly have opportunity now to embed proven technologies into our country compacts and then to align our budgets to delivery, not just to research. So we need to measure success by adoption at scale and not pilots completed. If we do this right, they will see that the next decade will not be remembered for conferences, but it will be for visible transformations in farmers' fields and youth, enterprises. So in short, we need to move from collaboration to operational cooperation, from projects to platforms, and from pilots, to programs at scale. So it's not just about MOUs, it has to be joint work plans and accountability. So to close, I feel that our technology future in Africa is not just about inventing more, but it has to be how we deliver at scale. I think all countries need to look at this, and we have to prioritize that, as one. What we already know works through partnerships powered by youth and enabled by policy. That, for me, is the real takeaway, from this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Makinde. Back to you, Dr. Araba.
Thank you so much, Dr. Butake. Dr. Makinde, thank you so much for your thoughts, your intervention. And we are aware IITA, the leadership role that IITA plays within the CGIAR in Africa. So we look forward to your continued leadership in pushing the case for not just working in silos, but that integrated approach of connecting entrepreneurship with research, public policy, academia, civil society, etc. To bring this all to a close, it is my distinct pleasure, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to invite our board chair, Dr. Ousmane Badiane, to provide his concluding remarks. I hope Dr. Badiane is online.
Yes, I'm online. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please provide. We'd like to hear from you. You've listened to all the insightful discussions over the last 2 days, and what are we taking away as we launch into 2026 as a community seeking Africa's prosperity? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Araba. And thank you to everybody who has joined us over the last 2-3 days, and those who are in this present session as well. This has been an excellent report, rich, but more importantly, really the comprehensive coverage of anything technology is included and treated masterfully in the report. So I think it's a huge addition to our evidence capital as we contemplate the next 10 years of CAADP and starting the Kampala implementation. Dr. Araba, we have heard so many different facets of technology, potentials, the institutional aspects, the deliveries and innovations. It is large. And just from that, it's easy to perhaps come to one conclusion, that we are actually not looking for an individual component or an individual element, but we're looking for a system that can deliver the right component and elements at the right time for the right purpose in the right situation. In other words, we are not delivering a technology, a set of technologies, but we look forward to a system that allow us to address emerging problems, stubborn problems, chronic one, new situations, and other ways of doing businesses. And that is much more system-driven than it is in terms of individual capabilities and capacities and assets. So as we therefore look forward to the next issue of the ATOR, the issue of governance of the science and technology innovation systems that allow a nimble yet comprehensive, well-resourced system to be able to deal with all the new frontier issues and stubborn challenges and so on, is going to be really important for us to have this systemic view. And when you say systemic, you're talking about governance for multiple parts that are moving around, that have to be coordinated, that have to work in synergy, and that have to complement each other, from the government to the private sector, to the local community, to the central power, to the continental, regional, and national, but also to the global system. So the next step, after having looked at all these different issues and then assess the potential, seen the progress, describe perhaps the frontier, the next thing to turn our attention to, and rightfully so, is how to bring those different pieces together in a governed system that is nimble and can work and can be multifaceted and can address issues that have emerged but are maybe emerging and that have been with us for a long time. So I would conclude, Dr. Araba, by again thanking the co-editors for an excellent report. Thank you, our communications team, for organizing an excellent 3-day conference. It was not obvious. For those who joined us, the contributors, the speakers, the panelists, and our translators who are with us here. And I would like to invite you to mark your calendars for the upcoming 2026 annual and trends and outlook reports that will be dealing with governance, an issue that is very close to the African Union Commissioner's attention as we deploy Kampala in the different countries. Technology is key, but how we govern the process as well, so we can tell is going to be important. So mark your calendars for the new ATOR on governance of Agrifood systems. That will, I think, add another milestone to the delivery of evidence to support the Kampala agenda and the CAADP. So thank you to everybody. Thank you for your time, for your contribution, and thank you for the partnership with Academia 2063. We have, since 2008 or so, sponsored, sorry, scrolling, sponsored this conference together with the African Union Commission, and we appreciate that partnership and look forward to deepening it in the months and years to come. So thank you very much, Dr. Araba, and back to you.
Well, I was just about to exit the meeting. Thank you very much, Dr. Usman Badian, Board Chair, Executive Chair of Academia 2063. Dr. Butake, I think my work is done. I will reiterate our thanks and appreciation to every one of you, all the way from the authors, the contributors, participants, the speakers throughout these series. Thank you for participating. Thank you for engaging. The conversation continues, but please engage with not just the material, but using the material as a springboard for your work in executing the Africa that we want. Dr. Butake, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Araba, Managing Director of Academia 2063, for your closing remarks. So there you have it. The conference is officially closed, but we are not going anywhere. We will be in touch with you to continue sharing insights from the report. And for now, we leave you with images on the key highlights from the 2025 ATO. Thank you and see you next time.
Thank you.
Plugging in for technology-driven transformation. Accelerating agri-food system transformation in Africa will require a new generation of investments, institutional reforms, and innovation strategies grounded in evidence, systems thinking, and innovative digital governance. How can technology be leveraged to deliver transformative impact? The 17th edition of the ReSAKSS Annual Trends and Outlook Report posits that sustainable transformation is possible only when combined with capable institutions, evidence-based and participatory governance, and inclusive innovation systems. Published by Academia 2063 and launched at the ReSAKSS Annual Conference, the Annual Trends and Outlook Report is the official monitoring and evaluation report for the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, CAADP. Themed Moving the Technology Frontiers in African Agri-Food Systems, ATOR 2025 demonstrates that accelerating progress toward ending hunger and eradicating poverty in Africa requires a bundle of technical, institutional, and social-political innovations embedded in coherent strategies. The report explores pathways for advancing Africa's agri-food technology frontier in ways that promote sustainable, resilient, and inclusive development. Technology as a systemic driver of productivity and resilience. The report examines frontier technologies with immediate and long-term potential to transform African agri-food systems. Satellite monitoring, machine learning crop models, and AI-enabled advisory services can improve yield forecasting, risk management, and input efficiency. An analysis of digitalization across value chains from e-learning and mobile advisory to e-markets and AI-powered platforms show that digital advisory services can raise yields and incomes and reduce the transaction costs of market participation, especially for small-scale farmers. Opportunities for broader use of small-scale irrigation, water harvesting, and resource-efficient technologies. The emergence of low-energy, sensor-enabled, and precision-based approaches opens pathways for Africa to accelerate progress, particularly when integrated with geospatial tools, climate information, and digital financial services. Digital technologies also underpin innovative mechanization service models, precision irrigation, livestock monitoring, aquaponics management, and insect farming logistics. These trends suggest that data and predictive analytics are becoming core infrastructure comparable to roads, irrigation, extension, and functioning markets. Institutions, governance, and innovation ecosystems. Successful adoption and scaling depend on supportive institutions, coherent regulatory frameworks, predictable policy environments, and well-organized diffusion pathways. Agricultural R&D investment is a critical determinant of long-term productivity, yet it remains far below African Union targets and global benchmarks. A new agricultural R&D system capacity index demonstrates that spending ratios alone are misleading. What matters is system capacity, human capital, institutional depth, and stable funding. Smallholder producer organizations, often the backbone of rural economies, are vital actors for technology diffusion, knowledge sharing, aggregation, and market access. Strengthening SPOs enhances the reach of technological transformation, ensuring that digital tools, climate information, improved seeds, and management practices reach farmers inclusively and effectively. Data, evidence, and knowledge systems as foundations for transformation. A review of 2 decades of CAADP implementation and 27 core indicators indicates that early gains in growth, trade, and poverty reduction were followed by a slowdown and reversal in some indicators. While agricultural spending remains below the 10% target, many countries have improved planning and coordination facilitated by the National Agricultural Investment Plans, joint sector reviews, and biennial reviews. As the continent transitions to CAADP 2026 to 2035, integrated digital platforms, interoperable systems, and dynamic statistical infrastructure will be essential for tracking progress, modeling scenarios, and informing strategic decisions. Global lessons and South-to-South cooperation. Advances in technology are inseparable from organizational innovations such as strong producer associations, cooperatives, irrigation districts, and regional research funding mechanisms. Precision agriculture, fintech, and traceability tools yielded broad-based gains only when land rights, infrastructure, finance, and institutions were in place. ATOR 2025 highlights 5 strategic priorities that are essential to guide Africa's next decade of innovation-driven transformation. Strengthen innovation ecosystems and science institutions, promote inclusive mechanisms for technology dissemination, expand digital and climate intelligence infrastructure, prioritize climate adaptation and resilience in technological agendas, and strengthen governance, coordination, and accountability mechanisms. It supports the vision of a more productive, resilient, and equitable agri-food system aligned with the Kampala Declaration. Africa's technological frontiers will gain ground when accompanied by robust, well-coordinated, and adaptive institutions capable of mobilizing innovation at scale. Time to plug in.